My son wrote, "Don't expect me to take care of you in old age. I have my own life and family. Don't call to bother us anymore." I read the message twice. I did not cry. I did not call him back to beg. I simply nodded, took a sip of my iced tea, and whispered, "So be it." Then I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. I said 2 words that would change my son's life forever. Protocol, Omega. The next morning he burst into my house demanding money, unaware that he had just become a stranger to my bank account. Before I tell you how I destroyed his arrogance with a single red pen, please hit the like button and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by the very people you sacrificed everything for. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. It was 7 in the evening, and the only sound in my kitchen was the hum of the refrigerator and the scraping of my fork against the plate. I was eating alone, as I had done every night since my wife Betty passed away 5 years ago. I am Marcus Jefferson. To my neighbors, I am just Mac, the 75-year-old retired man who drives a rusted Ford pickup truck and wears the same khaki pants until they fray at the hems. They see an old black man moving slow, tending to his garden, maybe struggling to make ends meet on a pension. They do not know who I really am. They do not know that for 40 years, I was the chief civil engineer for the city's largest infrastructure projects. They do not know that I hold 3 patents on structural concrete reinforcement that generate royalties every time a skyscraper goes up in this state. They do not know about the shares I own in the construction firm that built the skyline. I learned a long time ago that silence is power. In my generation, you didn't flash your money. You hid it. You buried it. You let it grow in the dark like roots under a mighty oak tree. My phone vibrated against the wooden table. It was a text message from my son Andre. My heart did a little jump. A father's heart always jumps no matter how old the child is. I thought maybe he was asking if I had eaten, maybe he was asking if I wanted to come over to see the game, maybe he just wanted to say hello. I put on my reading glasses and opened the message. The light from the screen was the only brightness in the room. "Dad, stop calling Chloe about the weekend. We are busy. And let's get this straight once and for all. Don't expect me to take care of you in old age. I have my own life and family to worry about. We are not your retirement plan. Don't call to bother us anymore." I stared at the words. I read them again, then a third time. I looked for the joke. I looked for the emoji that would say he was kidding. There was none. It was just cold, hard text. My son. The boy I had carried on my shoulders at parades. The boy whose college tuition I paid in full so he wouldn't have a day of debt. The man whose wedding to Chloe cost me $40,000. He was discarding me via text message while I ate pot roast in a silent house. I looked up from the phone. On the mantelpiece there was a framed photo of Andre. He was leaning against a black Porsche 911, smiling like he owned the world. He looked successful. He looked rich. He looked like a director of sales who had made it on his own. I looked at that photo and I felt a strange sensation. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't grief, it was clarity. It was the kind of clarity an engineer feels when he looks at a bridge and sees the exact hairline fracture that will bring the whole thing down. The Porsche in the photo. Andre didn't buy that. I did. Well, technically he bought it, but I paid the down payment of $20,000 when he said he needed it to impress clients. I paid the monthly installments for the first year when his commission check was light. He told his friends he was a self-made man. He told his wife Chloe that I was just a frugal old man with a small pension. And I let them believe it. I let them believe it because I didn't want them to love me for my money. I wanted them to love me for me. Clearly that was a miscalculation. I wiped my mouth with a napkin. I set my fork down. I did not reply to the text. Arguments are for people who think they can change the other person's mind. I didn't want to change his mind. I wanted to change his reality. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had on speed dial. It rang once. "Marcus, is everything all right? It is past 8. The voice belonged to Lucinda. She is my attorney. She is 60 years old, sharp as a razor blade, and the only person on earth who knows the exact number in my offshore accounts." "I am fine, Lucinda," I said. My voice was steady. It sounded like gravel, deep and dry. "Then why are you calling Mac?" "I need you to execute a protocol," I said. "Which one?" "Protocol Omega." There was a silence on the other end of the line, a long, heavy silence. Lucinda knew what that meant. We had drafted it 3 years ago as a joke, a nuclear option, a contingency plan in case the unthinkable happened. "Mac," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "Omega is total severance. It is the scorching of the earth." "Are you sure? Did Andre do something criminal?" No, I said, looking at the text message again. He did something honest. He told me exactly where I stand. He told me he has his own life. I think it is time I let him have it. Fully, I understand, Lucinda said. The professional tone returned. I will draft the paperwork tonight. I will freeze the trust access immediately. I will notify the bank to stop the auto payments on the mortgage. And the will. Rewrite it, I said. Everything goes to the Engineering Scholarship Fund for underprivileged youth. Every dime. Leave him $1, just one. So he cannot contest it and say I forgot him. Consider it done. Come to the office tomorrow at 10 to sign. I hung up. I felt lighter. I felt the way I used to feel when we finally poured the concrete foundation after months of digging in the mud. The structure was set. I stood up and walked to my study. I pushed aside the painting of the old lighthouse on the wall to reveal the wall safe. I spun the dial, left to 28, right to 4, left to 80. The heavy steel door clicked open. Inside there were stacks of bonds, deeds to properties, and stacks of cash. But I didn't touch those. I reached for the one thing that mattered tonight, a thick leather-bound book. The spine was cracked and worn. I called it the ledger. I sat at my heavy oak desk and turned on the green banker's lamp. I opened the book. The pages were filled with my handwriting, neat and precise, the handwriting of a man who drew blueprints for a living. This wasn't a diary. It was a record. For 40 years I had written down every single significant cent I had given to Andre. Not the birthday gifts, not the Christmas presents. Those were gifts. I listed the bailouts, the saves, the safety nets. I ran my finger down the yellowed pages. August 12th, 1998. Andre's first car accident. DUI. Lawyer's fees and settlement. $15,000. May 4th, 2005. Credit card debt payoff. $12,000. September 20th, 2010. Down payment for his first house. $40,000. The list went on, page after page. The Porsche, the wedding, the honeymoon in Bali that Chloe insisted was necessary for her mental health. The startup business that failed in 3 months because Andre didn't want to wake up before 10 in the morning. I looked at the total at the bottom of the last page. It was a number that could buy a small island, $640,000. That was the cost of my love. That was the price I paid to keep the rain off his head. And in return, I got a text message telling me I was a burden. He thought he was independent. He thought he was a big shot with his fancy title and his designer suits. He didn't know that I was the engine room of his life. I was the one shoveling the coal into the furnace so he could stand on the deck and blow the whistle. I picked up a red pen, a thick felt-tip marker. I turned to the page titled Active Liabilities. First line, monthly mortgage subsidy for Andre's house, $2,500. I drew a thick red line through it. Second line, car note for the Porsche, $1,200. I drew a red line through it. Third line, Chloe's credit card consolidation loan, $800. I slashed it out. Fourth line, Andre's country club membership dues, $500, slashed. I worked my way down the list. The health insurance for his dogs, the landscaping service for his lawn, the premium cable package he bragged about. I cut them all, slash, slash, slash. The sound of the marker on the paper was satisfying. It sounded like a sword cutting through the air. When I was done, the page was bleeding red. I closed the book. I put it back in the safe and spun the dial. I walked to the kitchen and poured the rest of my iced tea down the sink. I wasn't hungry anymore. I went to the refrigerator. I took a magnet and pinned a printout of Andre's text message right in the center of the door at eye level. I wanted it to be the first thing I saw in the morning. I wanted to remember why I was doing this. Because memory is a tricky thing. A father's love tries to soften the blows. It tries to make excuses. Oh, he was just stressed. Oh, he didn't mean it. I needed to remember that he did mean it. He showed me who he was. I went to bed. I slept better than I had in years. I didn't dream of my wife. I didn't dream of the past. I dreamed of a quiet future, a future where my phone didn't ring with demands for money. The next morning at exactly 8 o'clock, I was drinking my coffee on the front porch. The sun was shining on my old truck. It was a beautiful day. Then I heard the roar of an engine, not a truck, a sports car. The black Porsche screeched into my driveway, kicking up dust. Andre jumped out. He wasn't wearing his suit, he was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and he looked frantic. He looked like a man who had just realized the parachute wasn't opening. Chloe was with him. She slammed the passenger door. She was wearing sunglasses, but I could tell she was glaring. They stomped up the walkway. They didn't know about the will. They didn't know about the ledger. They didn't know that the bank notifications had probably started hitting their phones at midnight when Lucinda's program kicked in. Or maybe they were here for something else. Andre marched up the steps. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how I was. "Dad, we need to talk," he barked. He pushed past me into the house. Chloe followed him, wrinkling her nose at the smell of my old house, the smell of sawdust and old coffee. I stood up slowly. My knees popped. I followed them inside. Andre was standing by the kitchen table. He threw a folder down on the wood. It made a loud slap. "Sign this," he said. I looked at the folder, then I looked at him. "Good morning to you too, son," I said. "Cut the pleasantries," Dad Andre snapped. "We are in a hurry. We have an opportunity that expires at noon. We need $200,000. $200,000, I repeated. "Yes," Chloe chimed in, taking off her sunglasses. "It is a guaranteed investment. Cryptocurrency futures. Andre's friend has an algorithm. We can triple the money in a month." And where I asked, pulling out a chair and sitting down, "Do you propose I get $200,000? You know I live on a pension." Andre rolled his eyes. He looked at Chloe as if to say, "See, he is being difficult again." "We know about the equity, Dad," Andre said. "We ran a check on the house. This old dump is sitting on a double lot. It is worth 400 grand in this market. We want you to take out a home equity line of credit, or better yet, sell it." "Sell it?" I asked. "And where would I live?" "We found a place," Chloe said quickly. She pulled a brochure from her designer bag and tossed it on the table. "It is a studio apartment, South Side. It is very compact, easy to clean, and it is cheap. You don't need all this space. You are just one old man." I looked at the brochure. It was for a low-income senior housing project. The kind of place where the elevator smells like urine and the sirens never stop wailing. So I said, my voice low, "The plan is to sell the home I built with your mother, give you the money to gamble on crypto, and I move into a studio in the projects. It is not gambling, it is investing," Andre shouted. "And yes, that is the plan. Because we need the money. We are tight right now, Dad. We have expenses you don't understand." I looked at the refrigerator. The text message was right there, pinned at eye level. Andre hadn't seen it yet. He was too busy looking at my assets. "You have expenses," I said, "like the Porsche outside." "That is essential for my image," Andre spat. "Look, just sign the papers. We already filled out the application. You just need to sign." He tapped the paper with his finger. I looked at his finger. It was manicured, soft, a hand that had never held a shovel, a hand that had never built anything. I stood up. I walked to the refrigerator. "I thought you said you had your own life, Andre," I said. "What?" I pointed to the paper on the fridge. "I thought you said I shouldn't expect you to take care of me, that you have your family to worry about." Andre looked at the paper. He recognized his own text message. He flushed a deep shade of red. That was just... I was stressed, Dad. You know how it is." "No," I said. "I don't know how it is. Because I never spoke to my father that way. And I never asked him to sell his roof so I could buy magic beans." I walked back to the table. I picked up the folder with the loan application. "We need this money," Marcus, Chloe hissed. Her mask of politeness was gone. "If we don't come up with liquidity by tomorrow, we are going to lose our deposit on the vacation rental in Aspen." "Aspen," I said. "You want to sell my house so you can go skiing?" "It is, for networking," Andre yelled. "God, you are so selfish. You are sitting on this pile of money and you let us struggle. You are a bitter old man." "Selfish," I said. I took the folder in my hands. My hands are old, but they are strong. They are engineers' hands. I ripped the folder in half. The sound was loud in the small kitchen. "What are you doing?" Andre screamed. I ripped it again, and again, until it was just confetti. I threw the pieces in the air. They drifted down like snow. "I am not selling my house," I said. "I am not signing anything. And as of this morning, I am not paying for your house either." Andre froze. "What did you say?" I checked my watch. "It is 8:15. The automatic transfer for your mortgage usually goes out at 8. I canceled it last night." You can't do that," Andre stammered. "We will default." "That sounds like part of your own life that you need to handle," I said. "And the Porsche payment." I continued. Cancelled. And the credit cards. Cancelled. Chloe looked at Andre. Her face was pale. What is he talking about, Andre? You said he pays for everything. He does, Andre whispered. He pays for everything. Not anymore, I said. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. Get out of my house, you can't kick us out, Andre shouted, his face twisting into something ugly. We are your family. Family takes care of each other, I said. You just told me you aren't going to take care of me, so I am returning the favor. Andre stepped toward me, his fists clenched. He was younger, bigger, but he stopped. He looked in my eyes and he saw something he hadn't seen before. He didn't see his dad. He saw a man who had survived wars and riots and 40 years of construction sites. He saw Mac. You will regret this, old man, he hissed. You will be dead alone in this house and no one will find you for weeks. Maybe I said, but at least I will have a roof over my head, which is more than I can say for you next month. They stormed out. Chloe kicked a flower pot on her way down the stairs, shattering it. They jumped into the Porsche and peeled away. I looked at the broken flower pot. It was a begonia Betty had planted. I picked up the pieces. I wasn't angry, I was ready. I went back inside and locked the door. I knew this wasn't over. They were desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. They would be back. They would try to scare me. They would try to break me. But they forgot one thing. I built this house. I built the foundation. And I knew exactly how to defend it. I picked up the phone and called Lucinda again. They took the bait, I said. Phase 1 is complete. Good, Lucinda said. Get ready for Phase 2. They are going to come for your sanity next. I know, I said. Let them come. I have the receipts. I hung up and looked at the confetti on the floor. I didn't sweep it up. I left it there. A reminder of the battle that had just begun. The first shot had been fired, and I was still standing. I did not have to wait long for the second wave of the assault. They returned at 6 p.m, just as the sun was dipping below the tree line. This time they did not knock. They did not ring the bell. They used the spare key that I had given Andre 10 years ago for emergencies. I heard the lock tumble and the door swing open, hitting the stopper with a violent thud. They marched in, dragging Louis Vuitton suitcases that scraped loudly against my hardwood floors. They were not here to visit. They were here to occupy. Andre looked at me sitting in my recliner. His face was set in a mask of grim determination. We are not leaving, Dad, he announced, dropping his bags in the middle of the living room. We are staying right here until you come to your senses and sign those papers. We have nowhere else to go because you cut us off, so you are going to deal with us. We are going to make your life a living hell until you give us what is ours. Chloe followed him in, kicking the door shut behind her. She looked around the living room with a sneer of disgust. God, it smells like old people and mothballs in here, she said loudly. If we are going to stay here, we need to make some changes. This place is depressing. She walked over to the windows and ripped the curtains open. These curtains were sewn by my wife Betty 30 years ago. The sound of the fabric tearing slightly at the hooks made my jaw clench. I did not move from my chair. I simply watched them. I watched as they turned my sanctuary into their command center. They threw their coats on the dining table. They plugged their chargers into every outlet. They opened the fridge and complained that there was no almond milk, only cow milk and orange juice. They were like an invading army, but they were sloppy. They assumed that because I was old, I was helpless. They assumed that because I was silent, I was defeated. They were wrong. The war of attrition began 2 hours later. Chloe decided that the living room was too cluttered. She stood in front of the display cabinet where Betty kept her collection of porcelain figurines, small, delicate dancers and animals that she had collected since we were married. They were not worth much money, but they were worth everything to me. This is just junk, Chloe said, opening the glass door. It is tacky, Andre. Who keeps this kind of trash? It collects dust. It is unsanitary. Don't touch those, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Chloe looked at me and smiled, a cruel, thin smile. Or what, Marcus? Are you going to hit me? Go ahead. I will call the police so fast your head will spin, and then we will really have grounds to put you away. She reached in and grabbed a handful of the figurines. She did not place them gently on the table. She dropped them into a large black trash bag she had brought from the kitchen. The sound of the porcelain shattering against each other inside the bag was the sound of my heart breaking. But I did not rise. I gripped the armrests of my chair until my knuckles turned white. She swept the shelf clear. Clink, crash, smash, 30 years of memories into a garbage bag. There she said, tying the bag shut. "That is much better. Now we can breathe." Andre stood by the fireplace watching. He did not stop her. He did not look at me. He looked at his phone, probably checking the crypto markets that were eating his soul. I stood up slowly. I walked past them. I walked past the bag of broken memories. "Where are you going, old man?" Andre asked, running away. "I am going to bed," I said. "You won't sleep," Chloe called after me. "We are night owls, Marcus. We are going to have a party." I went into my bedroom and locked the door. I did not go to sleep. I went to my nightstand and picked up my iPad. They thought I was a dinosaur. They thought I didn't know how to use technology. They forgot that I was an engineer. I had wired this entire house myself 5 years ago. Every outlet, every light switch, the thermostat, the water heater, the security system. It was all connected to a central server that I controlled from this tablet. At 2 in the morning, the bass started. It was a rhythmic thumping that shook the floorboards. Chloe had set up a Bluetooth speaker in the living room and was blasting electronic dance music at full volume. I could hear them laughing. I could hear the clink of glasses. They were drinking my scotch. They were celebrating their occupation. They wanted to keep me awake. They wanted to break me through exhaustion so that by morning I would sign anything just to get some peace. I put in my industrial earplugs, the ones I used to wear when I was supervising jackhammer crews. The noise dulled to a distant hum. I lay in the dark and watched the screen of my iPad. The blue light illuminated my face. I saw the status of the house. Living room temperature 72 degrees, hallway lights on, water heater active, security system disarmed. I waited. Patience is a weapon. At 3:30, the music stopped. I heard heavy footsteps going toward the guest bathroom. The plumbing in this house is old, and the pipes carry sound. I heard the shower turn on. It was Chloe. She liked to take long showers late at night. I watched the water usage meter on my screen spike. I waited until the flow was steady. I waited until I knew she was fully lathered up, probably using Betty's expensive lavender soap that I kept for guests. Then I tapped the screen. System override. Water heater. Status off. In the basement, the pilot light on the high-capacity water heater was extinguished instantly. The reserve tank was bypassed. The water flowing to the shower went from a comfortable 105 degrees to 55 degrees in 3 seconds. I heard the scream through the wall. It was high-pitched and furious. "Andre," she shrieked. "The water. It is freezing." I heard Andre running to the bathroom door. "What happened?" "It just went ice cold," Chloe yelled. "Fix it." I tapped the screen again. Master bathroom. Water pressure. Reduced to 10%. The roaring shower turned into a pathetic trickle of ice water. I could imagine her standing there covered in soap, shivering in the dark. "It is this old house," Andre yelled back. "The pipes must be busted. I cannot fix it right now." "I hate this place," Chloe screamed. "I hate him." I smiled in the darkness. I was just getting started. They eventually settled down. I saw the lights in the hallway turn off on my dashboard. They had retreated to the guest bedroom. They were probably exhausted from their party and the cold shower. They needed sleep. I let them sleep for 45 minutes, just enough time to fall into that deep, heavy slumber. I looked at the clock. 4:15 in the morning, the darkest part of the night. I navigated to the security tab on my iPad. I had installed a commercial-grade alarm system 3 years ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. It had internal motion sensors and a 120 decibel siren mounted in the hallway directly outside the guest bedroom. I tapped the button marked panic mode. The sound was instantaneous and deafening. A wavering, piercing siren that was designed to wake the dead and disorient intruders. The lights in the hallway strobed on and off in a blinding white rhythm. I heard a crash from the guest room. Someone had fallen out of bed. Then the screaming started. Not angry screaming, terrified screaming. I put my noise-canceling headphones over my earplugs and walked out into the hallway. Andre was scrambling out of the guest room in his boxer shorts holding a golf club he must have brought in from his car. His eyes were wide and wild. He was spinning around looking for an attacker. Chloe was on the floor covering her ears, screaming at the top of her lungs, but I could not hear her over the siren. I stood at the end of the hallway wearing my robe holding a cup of tea. I looked calm. I looked confused. I pulled out my phone and tapped the app to silence the alarm. The noise cut out instantly, leaving a ringing silence that was almost louder than the siren. What happened? Andre gasped, dropping the golf club. His chest was heaving. He looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "Oh dear," I said, my voice feigning the tremulous weakness of an old man. "I must have pressed the wrong button on the keypad when I went to get water. I am so clumsy these days. You know how it is, my mind wanders." "You crazy old lunatic," Chloe shrieked, standing up. Her hair was wet and matted from the cold shower. "You did that on purpose. You are trying to kill us." "On purpose?" I asked, blinking innocently. "Why would I do that? This is my house. I just wanted a glass of water, but this new technology is so confusing." "Maybe you are right. Maybe I am losing my mind." Andre leaned against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He put his head in his hands. He was broken. He was tired. He was cold. "We cannot stay here," he whispered. "I cannot do this." "Then leave," I said. My voice shifted. The old man was gone. The engineer was back. "We are not leaving," Chloe hissed. "We are not leaving until you sign the papers. I do not care if you blow the roof off. We need that money." I looked at her. I looked at the way she stood there, shivering but defiant. She was tough, tougher than my son. But toughness without intelligence is just fragility waiting to break. "Suit yourself," I said. "But I should warn you, the wiring in this house is very old. Sometimes the lights just go out. And sometimes the heat just stops working. It is a very unpredictable house, just like its owner." I turned around and walked back to my room. "You are a monster," Chloe screamed at my back. I stopped and turned my head slightly. "No, my dear," I said. "I am a landlord, and you are bad tenants." I went into my room and locked the door again. I checked my iPad. Battery at 80%. I had plenty of charge. I lay back down. I knew they wouldn't sleep. They would be lying there waiting for the next siren, waiting for the next malfunction. Fear is the best eviction notice. I looked at the picture of Betty on my nightstand. The glass was cracked from when I had dropped it years ago, but her smile was still there. "I am sorry about the figurines, Betty," I whispered, "but I promise you, I will sweep them out of this house like dust." I closed my eyes. Phase 2 was active. I had taken away their comfort. I had taken away their sleep. Next, I was going to take away their reality. They thought they were fighting a senile old man. They didn't know they were fighting the man who designed the city's sewer system. And I knew exactly how to flush the waste. The morning after the night of the sirens was deceptively quiet inside my house, but I knew that across town, a bomb had just detonated. I sat in my kitchen nursing a cup of Earl Grey tea, enjoying the warmth of the ceramic mug against my calloused palms. I was not tired despite the lack of sleep. I felt the energized calm of a demolition expert who has just pressed the plunger and is waiting for the shockwave to arrive. You see, my son Andre and his wife Chloe lived in a fantasy world. They lived in a sprawling 5-bedroom mansion in the Heights, a gated community where the driveways are heated and the neighbors judge you by the year of your luxury sedan. It was a beautiful house with Italian marble floors, a chef's kitchen that had never seen a home-cooked meal, and a swimming pool that cost more to maintain than my entire annual grocery bill. For 10 years, Andre had hosted dinner parties there. He had posted photos on social media with captions like "Rise and Grind" and "Self-Made." He told his friends, his colleagues, and even his wife that his success as a sales director paid for that castle. He strutted around like a king in a fortress he believed he had built. He was lying. He had never built a thing in his life. He had never poured a foundation. He had never calculated a load-bearing wall. The truth was hidden in a blind trust I had set up a decade ago. When Andre bought that house, he didn't qualify for the loan. His credit was shot from the gambling debts I had wiped clean in 2005. So I stepped in. I set up the Jefferson Family Trust. I told him it was an inheritance vehicle from his mother's side, a little white lie to save his fragile ego. The trust paid the mortgage directly to the bank every month, $3,800. Like clockwork, for 120 months. Andre just saw the statements that said, "Paid in full," and took the credit. He truly believed he was entitled to it. He forgot that a trust needs a trustee, and that trustee was the old man in the khaki pants he had just insulted via text message. I looked at the clock. 9:15. The mail runs early in the Heights. Right about now, Andre would be walking out to his mailbox, probably hungover from the stress of the night before, expecting maybe a magazine or a flyer. Instead, he would find a certified letter from First National Bank. I could visualize it perfectly. The envelope would be thick. The red stamp on the front would say urgent notice of default. I took a slow sip of tea. The bergamot tasted sharp and clean. The notification I had sent to the bank the previous night was immediate. I had revoked the standing order. I had dissolved the payment guarantee. And because Andre was technically the primary borrower on paper, even though I was the guarantor, the system would have flagged his account instantly as high risk. The grace period I had waived it in the original contract clauses nobody reads. Miss a payment by 1 minute after the guarantor pulls out and the note is called. My phone did not ring. Andre didn't call me. He called the bank first. I knew he would. He would scream at some poor teller. He would demand to speak to the manager. He would ask why the trust hadn't covered the bill. And the manager, following the script I had legally mandated, would say, "The trust has ceased all disbursements, Mr. Jefferson. The grantor has terminated the arrangement effective immediately due to a violation of the beneficiary terms." Grantor. That was the word that would break him. He knew who the grantor was. 30 minutes later, the front door flew open. I hadn't bothered to lock it after I came out of the bedroom. I wanted him to come in. I wanted to see his face. Andre stood in the hallway. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair was disheveled, and he was holding a crumpled piece of paper in his shaking hand. He didn't have the Porsche this time. He must have driven Chloe's SUV. Maybe he was afraid the repo men were already looking for the sports car. He walked into the kitchen. He didn't scream. He didn't shout. He looked at me with a mixture of horror and disbelief. He looked at the old man drinking tea in a flannel shirt, and for the first time he realized that the power dynamic of his entire life had been an illusion. Why, he whispered. His voice cracked. I put my mug down gently on the coaster. Why, what, son? You cut the mortgage. The bank said the trust is closed. They said the payment was declined. They are threatening acceleration. They want the full balance or they will foreclose in 30 days. I nodded slowly. That sounds correct. Standard procedure for a high-risk borrower with no collateral. Why did you do it? Andre screamed suddenly, finding his voice. He slammed the letter down on the table next to my tea. That is my house. That is my home. We have lived there for 10 years. You cannot just pull the rug out from under us. It is not your house, Andre, I said calmly. It never was. It belongs to the bank. And for 10 years I have been paying the bank to let you sleep there. I have paid nearly $500,000 so you could play the big man in the big house. But it was a gift, he stammered. You said it was Mom's money. You said it was the trust. I am the trust, Andre. I said, my voice hardening. I am the source. Every brick in that house. Every shingle on the roof. Every drop of water in that pool. Me. My sweat. My patents. My work. And you know what the terms of the trust were. He stared at me blankly. He didn't know. He had never read the documents. The terms were simple, I continued. The beneficiary must maintain good standing with the grantor. That means family loyalty. That means respect. That means not sending text messages at 7 p.m. telling the grantor to drop dead. Andre fell into the chair opposite me. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He looked like a child who had lost his mother in a supermarket. But Dad, he whined, the arrogance draining out of him, leaving only pathetic fear. We can't pay that mortgage. It is $4,000 a month. I don't make that kind of money. Not really. The commission checks have been dry for 6 months. Chloe spends everything we bring in. If we lose the house, we lose everything. Our friends. Our reputation. Reputation, I scoffed. You mean the lie. You mean the image you built on my back. You don't understand. Andre pleaded, tears welling up in his eyes. Without that house, we are nobody. Chloe will leave me. She loves that house more than she loves me. Then she loves the wrong things, I said, taking another sip of tea. And maybe you do too. He looked at me with a flash of the old anger. You are enjoying this, aren't you? You are sitting there drinking your cheap tea and watching my life burn. You are a sadist. I am not enjoying it, Andre, I said. I am grieving. I am grieving the son I thought I raised. I am grieving the fact that I raised a man who thinks a house makes him a king and a father is just a servant to pay for it. He slammed his fist on the table, making my spoon rattle. You have to fix this. Call the bank, rehydrate the trust. I will apologize. Okay, I am sorry about the text. I am sorry about this morning. Just fix it. I looked at the text message still pinned to the refrigerator. It seemed to glow under the kitchen light. I cannot fix it, I said. You were very clear, Andre. You have your own life. You have your own family. I stood up and walked to the sink to rinse my cup. You wanted independence, son. You wanted me out of your business. Well, you got it. The mortgage is your business. The foreclosure is your business. The eviction notice that will come next month is your business. Andre stood up. He was shaking. You are killing me, he whispered. You are actually destroying me. No, I said, turning off the faucet and drying my hands on a towel. I am letting you live. For the first time in your life, you are going to live the life you can actually afford. It might be a small apartment. It might be a used car. But it will be yours. And that is a gift, Andre. A gift you are too blind to see right now. He stared at me with pure hatred. It was a cold, dark look. The look of a man who realizes he has been stripped naked in the town square. I will never forgive you for this, he hissed. I know, I said, and I will never forget that you chose a house over your father. Now go home, Andre. Go pack. You have 30 days. And if I were you, I would start selling the furniture. You are going to need the cash for the moving truck. He turned and ran out of the house. I heard the SUV start up and speed away. He was going back to his castle of sand. He was going back to tell his wife that the magic well had run dry. I stood in the silence of my kitchen. My tea was finished. The house was quiet. I walked to the living room and looked out the window. The sun was higher now. The world was waking up. My son was facing the first real crisis of his life. He was terrified. He was angry. But he was awake. Finally. I picked up my phone. I had one more call to make. Lucinda, I said when she answered. Yes, Mac. Phase 3, I said. He knows about the house. He is panicked. Is he breaking? She asked. Not yet, I said. He is still blaming me. He still thinks this is a punishment, not a reality check. What is next? He is going to try to keep up appearances, I said. He is going to try to throw a party or do something loud to prove he is still rich. He has a birthday coming up next week, I see, Lucinda said. And you want to attend? Oh yes, I said. I want to be the guest of honor. But first we need to make sure the lights go out. Literally. I hung up. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Andre's birthday. The big 4-0. He had been planning a gala at the mansion, a celebration of his success. I smiled a grim, humorless smile. It was going to be a party to remember. I would make sure of that. Because if he wanted to show off his self-made life, I was going to help him show everyone exactly what it was made of. Darkness and debt. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. But my son Andre defined insanity by throwing a $50,000 birthday gala 3 days after I cut off his funding. He was drowning in debt, his mortgage was in default, and his credit cards were frozen blocks of plastic. Yet he decided the best way to handle the crisis was to rent a chocolate fountain and hire a string quartet. It was a desperate attempt to keep up appearances, a frantic signal to his fake friends in the Heights that he was still the king of the castle, even though the castle was built on quicksand. I watched the preparations from the window of my guest room, where I was still technically occupying space, much to their horror. Caterers in white coats rushed in with trays of lobster and caviar. Florists carried in arrangements of white lilies that smelled like a funeral. At 5 in the afternoon, Andre and Chloe marched into my room. They were dressed for war. Andre was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, a suit that I had paid for last year for a charity ball. Chloe was wearing a silver gown that shimmered like fish scales, her neck draped in diamonds that I knew for a fact were leased. They looked beautiful and hollow like chocolate Easter bunnies. Andre cleared his throat. He did not look at me. He looked at the wall above my head. Dad, tonight is a very important night, he said, his voice tight with stress. The mayor might stop by. My biggest clients will be here. We cannot have any incidents. Incidents, I asked, sitting on the edge of the bed, polishing my glasses. You mean you do not want your guests to know that the man who paid for the roof over their heads is sleeping in the guest room? Chloe stepped forward. She pointed a manicured finger at me. We mean we do not want you wandering around looking like a hobo, she hissed. You are going to stay out of sight. In fact, the guest room is too close to the main hall. People might see you when they use the restroom. We need you to go downstairs. Downstairs, I repeated. You mean the basement. It is finished down there, Andre said quickly. There is a leather sofa and a TV. Just stay down there for 4 hours. Please, Dad, do not ruin this for me. If I close a deal tonight, I might be able to fix the mess you caused. I looked at him. He was blaming me for the mess. He truly believed that my refusal to be bled dry was the cause of his hemorrhage. I stood up. I smoothed out my flannel shirt. I put on my old baseball cap, the one with the grease stains from the garage. Fine, I said. I will go to the basement. I will stay out of your way. I do not want to mingle with your friends anyway. They drink wine that costs more than my truck. Thank you. Andre sighed, relieved. He thought he had won. He thought I was submitting. Just lock the door from the inside, okay? We don't want anyone stumbling down there by mistake. I walked past them. I walked through the kitchen, which was now a war zone of chefs and servers. I opened the door to the basement. The air that came up was cool and smelled of concrete and stored holiday decorations. I walked down the stairs into the gloom. I heard the lock click behind me. They had locked me in. They had put their father in the cellar like a bottle of cheap vinegar so he wouldn't spoil the vintage wine. I sat on the leather sofa Andre had mentioned. It was cold. I looked around. The basement was finished, yes, but it was essentially a storage unit for their ego. Awards Andre had bought. Magazine covers he had framed. It was a shrine to a career that didn't exist. But there was something else in the basement, something they had forgotten. In the far corner behind a stack of unused gym equipment was a gray metal panel on the wall, the breaker box. I walked over to it. I opened the metal door. It creaked softly. Inside were rows of black switches labeled in my own handwriting from 10 years ago when I supervised the electrical installation. Main hall, kitchen, landscape lighting, pool pump, a C unit, and right at the top, the big double switch, main breaker. I smiled in the semi-darkness. They had locked me in the control room. I waited. I could hear the party starting above me, the muffled sound of the string quartet playing Mozart, the tapping of high heels on the marble floors I had paid for, the roar of laughter, the clinking of glasses. It sounded like the Titanic just before the iceberg hit. 2 hours passed. The noise grew louder. The bass of a DJ replaced the strings. I checked my watch. 8:30. Time for speeches. Andre loved speeches. He loved to stand in the center of the room holding a glass of champagne and tell everyone how hard he worked. I moved a wooden crate over to the door at the top of the stairs. I stood on it so I could hear better through the wood. "Attention, everyone!" I heard Andre's voice booming over a microphone. The music lowered. "Thank you all for coming. Tonight isn't just about turning 40. It is about legacy. It is about the empire we are building." Applause. Polite, enthusiastic applause from people who were drinking his free liquor. I looked at the house I built. Andre continued. "And I remember coming here with nothing but a dream. I worked 18-hour days. I sacrificed. I took risks. And look around. This is what self-reliance looks like." Self-reliance. The word hung in the air. I stepped down from the crate. I walked back to the breaker box. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a heavy industrial flashlight, the kind I used for inspecting tunnel cracks. I turned it on. The beam was blindingly bright white and focused. I looked at the panel. I put my hand on the main breaker. The switch was cold steel. "Nobody gave me a handout," Andre was saying upstairs. "Nobody wrote me a check. I stand here today because I earned it." Click. I pulled the lever down with a sharp mechanical snap. The result was instantaneous. The hum of the refrigerator died. The music cut out mid-beat. The thumping of the bass vanished, leaving a ringing silence. Above me I heard the collective gasp of 100 people. Then the screams. Not terrified screams, but the confused, annoyed screams of rich people plunged into sudden darkness. "What happened?" I heard Chloe yell. "The lights! Turn on the lights! It must be a fuse!" Andre shouted, his voice cracking. "Stay calm, everyone. It is just a fuse." I waited 10 seconds, enough time for their eyes to try and adjust to the pitch black. The house was sealed tight. Without the chandeliers, it was a tomb. I walked up the stairs. I did not rush. I unlocked the door from the inside. They had locked the knob, but I had the master key in my pocket. I always carried it. I opened the door. The main hall was chaos. People were bumping into each other. The only light came from a few cell phone screens casting ghostly blue shadows on the walls. I stepped into the doorway. I raised my flashlight. I aimed it directly at the center of the room where Andre was standing on a raised platform holding a dead microphone. The beam cut through the darkness like a laser. It hit Andre square in the face. He flinched, shielding his eyes, blinded by the intensity. "Who is that?" someone shouted. "It is me," I said. My voice was loud, trained to carry over construction noise. I walked forward, the beam of light guiding me, parting the crowd like the Red Sea. They saw an old man in a flannel shirt and a baseball cap holding a light. They saw the man Andre had hidden in the basement. Dad, Andre squinted, trying to see past the glare. "What are you doing? Turn the lights back on." "I can't." "Son," I said. My voice was sad, heavy with a fake apology that dripped with sarcasm. "Why not?" Chloe shrieked from somewhere in the dark. "Go flip the switch." I lowered the lights slightly, just enough so they could see my face. I looked pathetic. I looked broken. I looked exactly like the victim they had tried to create. "I am so sorry, everyone," I said, addressing the crowd, my beam sweeping over the faces of the city's elite. "I am so sorry to ruin the party. But I couldn't pay the electric bill." What Andre whispered. I turned the light back to him, pinning him like a bug on a board. "You see, folks," I continued, my voice trembling perfectly. "I live on a fixed income, and my son Andre here, he manages my finances. He told me he had to cut my pension this month. He said times were tough. He said he had his own life and his own family to worry about." Murmurs rippled through the room. Shocked whispers. "Is that true? Did he say that?" "So I tried to save electricity," I said, shrugging my shoulders, "but I guess I didn't save enough. They cut the power line today." I told Andre. I begged him to pay it just for tonight. But he said he didn't have the cash. "That is a lie," Andre screamed. He stepped off the platform, but he tripped in the dark and fell against a waiter, sending a tray of glasses crashing to the floor. The sound was violent. "It is a lie. I pay for everything." "Do you?" I asked. "Then why are the lights out, Andre? If you are so rich, why is your father standing here in the dark telling you that the check bounced?" I turned the light to the guests. "Please forgive him," I said. "He tries hard, but he has been struggling. He has been borrowing a lot of money from me, and I just ran out. I gave him my last dollar yesterday." The crowd backed away from Andre. I could feel the shift in the room. They weren't looking at a successful businessman anymore. They were looking at a fraud. They were looking at a man who threw a gala while his father couldn't keep the lights on. "This is insane," Chloe yelled, pushing through the crowd. "He is lying. He is senile. He doesn't know what he is saying." I turned the beam on her. She looked demonic in the harsh light, her makeup smeared, her silver dress glittering inappropriately. "Oh, Chloe," I said softly. "I am sorry I couldn't buy you that vacation house you wanted. I know you said you hated living here. I know you said this house wasn't good enough, but it is all we have left." The guests started to move toward the door. The spell was broken. The illusion of wealth and success had been shattered by a single flashlight and a well-placed lie that was actually the truth in reverse. "I am leaving a woman in a fur coat," said loudly. "This is disgusting, treating his father like that. I am pulling my investment," a man in a tuxedo muttered as he walked past me. Andre scrambled to his feet. Wait, don't go. The generators will kick in. It is just a glitch." "There are no generators." "Andre," I said, my voice cutting through his panic. "I sold them last month to pay for your car insurance. Remember?" I hadn't, of course, but he couldn't prove it, not in the dark. Not when he was hyperventilating. The room emptied fast. The sound of Ferraris and Bentleys starting up in the driveway filled the air. In 5 minutes, the house was empty except for the catering staff who were using their phone lights to pack up the unpaid-for lobster. Andre stood in the middle of the empty hall. The beam of my flashlight was the only thing holding him upright. "You ruined me," he whispered. "You humiliated me." I walked over to the wall. I flipped the light switch. Nothing happened because the breaker was still off downstairs. "No sun," I said, turning off the flashlight and leaving us in the gray gloom of the moonlight coming through the windows. "I just turned off the lights. You are the one who built a life that can't survive in the dark." I walked back toward the kitchen. "And by the way," I said over my shoulder, "Happy birthday. I got you a present. It is in the mailbox. It is a foreclosure notice. I thought you might want to frame it next to your awards in the basement." I went back to the guest room. I didn't lock the door this time. I didn't need to. They wouldn't come in. They were too busy standing in the wreckage of their reputation trying to figure out how to explain to the mayor why the power went out on the self-made man. Phase 3 was complete. I had taken their house, now I had taken their pride. Next, I was going to take their freedom. The trap was set and they were walking right into it. Humiliation acts like gasoline on a fire for people like Chloe and Andre. After the lights went out at their gala and their reputation was left in tatters on the dark floor of that mansion, they did not reflect on their mistakes. They did not seek redemption. They sought revenge. They retreated to the guest room of my house, the only territory they still held, and they began to plot their endgame. I knew they would. I expected it. That is why 3 days ago, while they were out spending money, I had taken a small screwdriver and installed a high-fidelity listening device behind the headboard of the guest bed. It was not legal in the strictest sense, but war has its own rules. I sat in my study the morning after the party wearing my noise-canceling headphones, sipping a fresh cup of coffee. I pressed play on the recording. The audio was crisp. I could hear the rustle of sheets. I could hear the desperate, ragged breathing of two people who felt the walls closing in. "He has lost his mind," Chloe's voice hissed through the speakers. "Did you see him, Andre? He stood there with that flashlight like a lunatic. He humiliated us in front of the mayor, in front of the investors. We are finished in this town unless we control the narrative." "We are finished anyway," Andre moaned. The bank called again. "The foreclosure notice is real. We have 30 days. "We can fix this," Chloe interrupted him. Her voice dropped low, cold, and serpentine. "We just need access to his accounts. We need the power of attorney, Andre. If we have that, we can reverse the transfers. We can sell this house, we can take the money and run." "He will never sign it," Andre said. "You saw him. He ripped the contract. He is lucid, Chloe. He is mean, but he is lucid." "Is he?" she asked. "Or is he suffering from paranoia? Is he acting erratically, cutting off the power, hoarding money, living in the past? That sounds like dementia to me. We just need a doctor to say so." "A doctor?" Andre hesitated. "No doctor is going to sign off on that. He is sharp as a tack." "Dr. Finch will," Chloe said. There was a silence on the tape. I paused the recording. Dr. Lawrence Finch. I knew the name. He ran a boutique clinic downtown. He was known for writing prescriptions for pain pills to housewives who didn't need them and signing medical excuses for executives who needed a vacation. He was a man whose ethics were as flexible as his billing hours. I pressed play again. "Finch owes me," Chloe continued. "From the old days. I know things about his billing practices. If we go to him, if we tell him that Marcus is dangerous, that he is a threat to himself and others, he will sign the certificate of incapacity. We get an emergency temporary guardianship. We put him in a facility just for evaluation. By the time he gets out, we will have liquidated everything." "Put him away," Andre whispered. "You mean a mental hospital?" "It is for his own good," Chloe said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "He is clearly unstable. We are doing him a favor, and once he is declared incompetent, the new will he probably wrote is void. We get it all, Andre." I took off the headphones. I sat in the silence of my study. My hands were steady, but my heart was cold. They were not just greedy. They were predatory. They were planning to strip me of my freedom. They were planning to lock me in a padded room and drug me into oblivion so they could buy handbags and sports cars. I did not pack a bag. I did not run. I picked up my phone and called my private investigator, a man named Silas, who used to work for the IRS before he realized the private sector paid better. "Silas," I said, "I need a file on Dr. Lawrence Finch. I need it in an hour. Specifically, look for insurance fraud. Look for phantom patients. Look for the opiates." "I have it already," Max Silas said, his voice rough like sandpaper. "I have been tracking him for another client. The guy is a walking felony. He bills Medicare for surgeries he performs on dead people. I will email you the PDF." I printed the file. It was 50 pages thick. It was a heavy document, heavy enough to crush a man. I put the file in a red folder. I put on my best suit, not the khaki pants. I wore the charcoal wool suit I used to wear to city hall meetings when I had to tell the mayor that his bridge was going to cost an extra $10 million. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like the man who signs the checks. I drove my truck to Dr. Finch's clinic. It was a modern building with glass walls and abstract art in the lobby. It smelled of lavender and money. I walked up to the receptionist. "I have an appointment with Dr. Finch." I lied. "Marcus Jefferson. I don't see your name in the system, sir, she said, tapping her keyboard. Tell him it is about the Andre Jefferson referral, I said. Tell him it is urgent. She made a call. A moment later, she nodded. Go right back. Room 3. I walked down the hallway. I entered room 3. Dr. Finch was waiting. He was a small man with dyed black hair and a tan that came from a bottle. He was wearing a white coat that was too big for him. He looked at me with a professional concern that was as fake as the plant in the corner. Mr. Jefferson, he said, gesturing to the exam table. Please have a seat. Your son called me. He is very worried about you. He says you have been confused lately. Aggressive. I did not sit. I stood by the door. I locked it. The click was loud. Finch looked at the lock, then at me. His smile faltered. Is there a problem, Mr. Jefferson? I walked over to his desk and dropped the red folder in the center of his blotter. It landed with a heavy thud. The problem, doctor, is that you are about to make a very bad diagnosis, I said. He looked at the folder. What is this? Open it, I said. He opened it. He saw the spreadsheets. He saw the patient names highlighted in yellow. He saw the dates of death cross-referenced with the dates of billing. He saw his life ending. His face went gray. His hands started to shake. Where did you get this? I am a retired engineer, doctor, I said. I specialize in finding cracks in the foundation. And you have a very big crack. What do you want? He whispered, closing the folder quickly as if the paper itself was radioactive. Money. I can pay you. I don't want your dirty money, I said, leaning over the desk. I have plenty of my own. That is why my son sent you to me. He wants you to say I am crazy so he can steal it. Finch swallowed hard. He wiped sweat from his forehead. Chloe. She said you were dangerous. She said you cut the power. I cut the power because he didn't pay the bill, I said. That is not dementia. That is parenting. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a standard certificate of mental competency. I had drafted it myself. Here is what is going to happen. Doctor, I said, you are going to sign this. You are going to attest that you have examined me thoroughly. You are going to certify that I am of sound mind, excellent memory, and fully capable of managing my own affairs. You are going to notarize it with that stamp on your desk. And if I don't, he asked, his voice trembling. I pointed to the red folder. Then I walk out of here and I drive straight to the FBI field office. And you will be trading that white coat for an orange jumpsuit by dinner time. He looked at me. He looked at the folder. He looked at the certificate. It was not a choice. It was a rescue. He grabbed his pen. He signed it. He stamped it. His hand shook so much the stamp was crooked, but it was legal. He handed me the paper. Now get out, he croaked. Please. Just take the folder and go. I took the certificate. I folded it neatly and put it in my pocket next to my heart. I picked up the red folder. I will keep this, I said, just in case you decide to have a change of heart, or in case Chloe calls you again. If she calls you, tell her I am the sanest man you have ever met. Tell her I am sharp as a razor. I unlocked the door. I walked out. I walked through the waiting room past the patients who were waiting for their pills. I walked out into the sunshine. I sat in my truck and looked at the certificate. It was a shield, an ironclad shield against their next attack. They wanted to play the medical card. They wanted to use the system against me. But they forgot that systems are built on rules and rules can be leveraged. I drove home. I felt a cold satisfaction. When I got back to the house, Andre and Chloe were sitting in the kitchen. They looked up when I entered. They looked hopeful. They thought I had been wandering aimlessly. They thought the plan was working. Where were you, Marcus? Chloe asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. We were so worried. Did you get lost? I looked at them. I patted my chest pocket where the certificate lay against my ribs. I went to the doctor, I said. They exchanged a look of pure greed. Really, Andre said, standing up. Which doctor? Did you see Dr. Finch? I did, I said. Nice man. Very thorough. And what did he say? Chloe asked, leaning forward like a snake about to strike. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in days. He said, I am perfectly healthy, I said. In fact, he gave me a clean bill of health. He said I have the heart of a lion and the mind of a chess player. Their faces fell. The hope vanished, replaced by confusion and fear. But, Andre stammered, that is not what... What I asked. What did you expect him to say, son? Nothing, Andre muttered, sitting back down. I walked past them to my room. Oh, and one more thing, I said, pausing at the door. Dr. Finch sends his regards, Chloe. He said you should be careful. Stress is bad for the complexion. I went into my room and closed the door. I heard them whispering frantically in the kitchen. They were panicking. Their ace in the hole had just been trumped. Phase 4 was coming. I had the legal protection. Now it was time to cut off the last of their supply lines. It was time to embarrass them in the one place that mattered to them more than anything. The mall. Stress is a funny thing as it manifests differently in everyone. And while I deal with stress by fixing things or building walls, people like Chloe deal with stress by spending money they do not have. After the disaster with Dr. Finch and the failure of their plot to have me declared incompetent, the atmosphere in my house was toxic. Andre was pacing the floor, chewing his fingernails until they bled, but Chloe was different because she needed a release. She needed a dopamine hit to remind herself that she was still part of the elite. She needed to feel the weight of a shopping bag in her hand to feel alive. It was 2 p.m. when she stormed out of the guest room. She was wearing huge dark sunglasses and a trench coat belted tightly at the waist, and she had that manic look in her eye that I had seen before. She grabbed the keys to the SUV from the counter. I am going out, she announced to the empty kitchen, although I was sitting right there reading the newspaper. I need air. I need to clear my head. I did not stop her. I did not ask where she was going because I already knew. I had seen her slip Andre's wallet out of his jacket pocket while he was in the bathroom. She was going to the holy grail of retail therapy. She was going to the Hermes boutique at the Galleria. I watched her drive away. Then I picked up my phone and opened the banking app. I navigated to the credit card section, specifically the account for the Centurion card, the heavy black titanium rectangle that Andre carried around like a religious artifact. He told everyone it was his. He flashed it at dinners. He dropped it on trays to hear the heavy clatter it made. But it was not his. It was a supplementary card issued on my account from back when I needed him to buy materials for the construction sites without needing my approval every 5 minutes. I had never canceled it because until 3 days ago I was a foolish old man who wanted his son to feel important. I looked at the status of the card. It was currently active. I tapped the button labeled Report Lost or Stolen. A warning popped up asking if I was sure. I tapped Yes. Then I tapped the option for Unauthorized User. The status changed instantly to Frozen. Confiscate on site. I put the phone down and went back to my crossword puzzle. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the snap. Across town, Chloe was walking into the Hermes boutique like she owned the building. I can imagine the scene perfectly because I know how she operates. She would have walked past the velvet rope nodding to the security guard with that haughty tilt of her chin. The sales associates would have rushed to her because they knew her face, or rather, they knew the commission she usually generated. She was not there to browse. She was there to hunt. She needed a trophy to make herself feel better about living in a guest room with a father-in-law she despised. She pointed to a bag in the display case. A Birkin 30 in Togo leather, probably the Atoupe color she had been obsessing over for months. The price tag would be somewhere around $25,000. It was an obscene amount of money for a bag to carry keys and lipstick, but to Chloe it was a shield against reality. "I'll take it," she said. "Wrap it up." She probably felt a rush of power as she said those words, the adrenaline of the purchase washing away the humiliation of the last few days. She placed the black titanium card on the glass counter. It made that distinctive heavy sound, the sound of unlimited credit. The sales associate smiled, picked up the card, and inserted it into the chip reader. Chloe tapped her manicured nails on the glass, waiting for the receipt, waiting for the high. But the machine did not print a receipt. It beeped, a long, harsh tone. Long, harsh. The associate frowned. "I am sorry, Mrs. Jefferson," she said. "It says declined." "Try it again," Chloe snapped. "It is a Centurion card. It does not have a limit. Your machine must be broken. It is probably the Wi-Fi." The associate nodded apologetically. "Of course, let me try the manual entry." She typed in the numbers. She pressed enter. This time the machine did not just beep. The screen flashed a code. Code 10. That is the merchant code for pickup card. Do not return to customer. Call authorization center. The associate's face went pale. She looked at Chloe, then at the card, then at the security guard standing by the door. Is there a problem? Chloe demanded, her voice rising an octave. I do not have all day. One moment, please, Mrs. Jefferson, the associate said, her voice trembling. I just need to get the manager to override the system. She took the card and walked quickly into the back office. Chloe stood there tapping her foot, annoyed but not yet panicked. She thought it was a technical glitch. She thought she was untouchable. 5 minutes passed. Chloe started to huff. She looked around, ensuring no one important was witnessing this delay. Then the door to the back office opened. The manager did not come out alone. 2 uniformed mall security officers came out with him, and behind them was a uniformed police officer who happened to be patrolling the mall. Chloe Jefferson, the police officer asked, stepping forward. Yes, Chloe said, looking confused. Where is my card? Ma'am, that card has been reported stolen. The officer said, his hand resting on his belt. The issuer has flagged it for immediate confiscation and reported an unauthorized user attempting a high-value transaction. Stolen. Chloe laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. That is ridiculous. It is my husband's card. I use it all the time. Look at the name. Andre Jefferson. We checked the account, ma'am, the manager said quietly, holding the card out of reach. The primary account holder, Mr. Marcus Jefferson, has flagged this card as compromised. He stated that no one has authorization to use it, especially not for a $25,000 purchase, Marcus, Chloe whispered. The realization hit her like a bucket of ice water. I need you to come with us, ma'am, the officer said, taking a pair of handcuffs from his belt. We need to sort this out at the station. This is attempted credit card fraud. You cannot arrest me. Chloe shrieked, backing away until she bumped into a display of silk scarves. Do you know who I am? I am a resident of the Heights. This is a mistake. He is just a senile old man. He forgot. Ma'am, stop resisting, the officer said, grabbing her arm. She screamed. It was a primal sound of pure entitlement being crushed by reality. They walked her out of the boutique, past the velvet rope, past the tourists looking in the window, past the other shoppers who stopped to film the scene with their phones. Chloe Jefferson, the queen of the social scene, was being dragged out of Hermes in handcuffs, kicking and screaming about a misunderstanding. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I knew who it was. The police usually let you make one call to sort things out before booking you. I picked up. Marcus. She screamed. Her voice was distorted by static and hysteria. Marcus, you sick old bastard. Tell them. Tell them right now. Hello, Chloe, I said calmly, turning a page of my newspaper. You seem upset. Upset, she screeched. I am in a holding cell at the mall security office. They arrested me, Marcus. They put me in handcuffs in front of everyone. They say the card is stolen. Tell them it is a mistake. Tell them I have permission. Permission, I asked. I paused for effect. I don't recall giving you permission to spend $25,000 on a handbag, Chloe. In fact, I recall you telling me that I was a burden, that I needed to move into a studio apartment to save money. It was just a bag, she sobbed, her anger breaking into panic. I needed it. I was stressed. Andre said I could use it. It is his card. It is my card, I corrected her. Andre was just an authorized user, past tense. I revoked that authorization this afternoon, just like I revoked the mortgage, just like I revoked the trust. You set me up, she wailed. You knew I would go shopping. You waited for me to do it. I knew you were a creature of habit, Chloe, I said. And I knew that when the pressure got too high, you would run to the only comfort you know, spending other people's money. Fix this, she begged. Please, Marcus. The police officer is writing up the report. If you don't drop the charges, they are going to book me for grand larceny. That is a felony, Marcus. I will go to jail. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 3:30. My favorite game show was about to start. I cannot help you, Chloe, I said, my voice flat and final. Why not, she screamed. Because I have my own life, I said, using the exact words from the text message that started this war. And I have my own family to worry about. And right now, my family consists of me and my peace of mind. And neither of those things involves bailing you out of jail for trying to buy a purse that costs more than my first car. But we are your family, she cried. No, I said. You are just people who used to live in my house. Don't expect me to pay for your vices, Chloe. Those days are over. I hung up the phone. I blocked the number. I sat there in the silence of my kitchen. I imagined her in that small security room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the reality of her life crashing down around her. She wanted a luxury bag. She got a criminal record. I stood up and poured myself a fresh cup of coffee. Andre would find out soon. The police would call him next. He would have to go down there. He would have to face the shame. He would have to realize that his black card was just a piece of plastic and his status was just a vapor. Phase 4 was complete. I had cut off their credit. I had destroyed their reputation. I had shown them that without me they were nothing but common thieves. But I wasn't done. The next phase was going to be the most painful of all, because now that they had no money, no credit, and no dignity, they were going to turn to the only people who would still lend them cash. The kind of people who don't ask for credit scores, the kind of people who ask for blood. And I knew exactly who Andre owed, and I knew exactly when they would come collecting. The night air was thick with humidity and the smell of ozone that usually precedes a storm, but the storm that was coming to my doorstep didn't have anything to do with the weather. It was 11 o'clock at night. My house was dark except for the single lamp burning in my study where I sat cleaning my old service pistol. I wasn't cleaning it because I planned to use it. I was cleaning it because the mechanical rhythm of disassembly and reassembly calmed my nerves. It reminded me that every machine has a function and every part has a place. My son Andre had forgotten his place. Andre was cowering in the kitchen pantry. He had come back from the police station alone hours ago, leaving his wife in a holding cell because he couldn't afford the bail bondsman's 10% fee. He had paced the floor for hours, sweating through his shirt, checking the window every 30 seconds. He looked like a trapped rat. When I asked him what was wrong, he just muttered about bad investments and timing. But I knew the truth. My private investigator Silas had sent me the file at dinner time. It wasn't just crypto. It wasn't just a bad market. It was online gambling, high-stakes poker and sports betting on offshore sites that operate out of basements in Eastern Europe and back rooms in Jersey. Andre wasn't an investor, he was a degenerate gambler. And he was in the hole. Deep. $500,000 deep. The file contained one more piece of information that made my blood run cold. To get the credit line, Andre had signed a promissory note. He had put up collateral. My house, my pension, my life. He had forged my signature on a guarantor agreement witnessing it with a stamp he must have stolen from a notary friend. He had sold me down the river to save his own skin. I heard the cars before I saw them. 3 heavy SUVs rolling slowly down the street, their headlights off. They pulled up onto my lawn, crushing the grass I had mowed yesterday. The doors opened. Men stepped out. Big men. Men who wore leather jackets in the summer to hide what was underneath. Andre heard them too. He let out a whimper from the kitchen. "Dad," he screamed, running into the study. "Dad, they are here. You have to help me. You have to pay them. They will kill me, Dad. They will actually kill me." I didn't look up from my gun. I slid the barrel back onto the frame. "Who is here, Andre?" I asked calmly. "The investors," he lied. His eyes were wild, darting around the room. "They are angry about the delay. Just give them the money. Please, write a check. I will pay you back, I swear. Investors." I repeated. I stood up and walked to the window. I peered through the blinds. I saw a man walking up the driveway holding a baseball bat. Another was carrying a crowbar. "Those don't look like investors, son," I said. "They look like consequences." A heavy crash shook the front door. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. They weren't knocking. They were announcing their arrival. Andre fell to his knees. He grabbed my leg. "It is the Russians, Dad. Or maybe the Albanians. I don't know. I owe them 500 grand. I signed your name. I told them you were backing me. I told them you were rich. You have to save me." He admitted it. Finally. When the wolf was at the door, he admitted he had covered himself in sheep's clothing made of my wool. I looked down at him. I felt a profound sadness, but underneath it, a core of steel. "You committed fraud, Andre. You put a hit out on your own father effectively." The front door gave way with a deafening crack. Heavy boots stomped into my hallway. "Where is he?" a deep voice boomed. "Where is the little weasel?" Andre scrambled backward, crawling on his hands and knees into the corner behind my heavy oak desk. "Hide me," he sobbed. "Please, Dad, tell them I am not here. Tell them I left town." I looked at the pistol on my desk. I picked it up. I put it in the drawer. I didn't need a gun for this. I needed the truth. I walked out of the study and into the hallway. There were 4 of them. The leader was a mountain of a man with a shaved head and a scar running through his eyebrow. He was holding the bat. He looked at me, surprised to see an old man standing there in a cardigan, not trembling, not begging. Who are you? He growled. I am Marcus Jefferson, I said, my voice steady. I own this house, and you are breaking my door frame. That is mahogany. It is going to cost you to fix it. The big man laughed, a dry, humorless sound. We are looking for Andre Jefferson, and we are looking for our money, $500,000. He said his daddy was good for it. He showed us the papers. He took a folded document from his jacket and waved it at me. I walked closer. I reached out my hand. Let me see that. The man hesitated, then handed it to me, probably out of sheer curiosity. I looked at the signature at the bottom. It was a good forgery. He had practiced. But he had missed the loop on the J. I always loop my J. This is a forgery, I said, handing the paper back. The man's eyes narrowed. Don't play games, old man. We did our due diligence. We know you have money. We know you have assets. If you don't pay, we take the house. We take everything. And we break your legs just for the inconvenience. I stepped closer to him. I was half his size, but I had commanded construction sites where men like him were just labor. I don't play games, son, I said. And I don't pay debts I didn't incur. My son forged that signature. That makes the contract void, and it makes him a criminal. The man stepped forward, raising the bat slightly. I don't care about the law. I care about my money. Someone is paying tonight. I looked him in the eye. You are a businessman, I said. A violent one, but a businessman. You know that if you touch me, you bring down heat you don't want. I am a retired city official. I have friends in the precinct. I have friends in the FBI. You hurt me and this whole operation gets rolled up by morning. The man paused. He was calculating. He saw that I wasn't bluffing. But I continued, if you want the man who actually owes you money, the man who lied to you, the man who tried to use me as a shield. Where is he? The man asked, lowering the bat. Andre was listening from the study. He must have held his breath. He must have prayed to a God he hadn't spoken to in years. He must have thought that his father, the man who always bailed him out, would lie for him one last time. I pointed to the study door. He is hiding behind the desk, I said. A scream came from the study. No, Dad. No. The big man smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Thank you, Mr. Jefferson, he said. He signaled to his men. 2 of them rushed into the study. I heard a scuffle. I heard the sound of furniture overturning. Then I heard Andre screaming as they dragged him out. He was kicking and crying. Snot ran down his face. He looked at me with eyes full of betrayal. You gave me up, he shrieked. You gave me to them. They are going to kill me. I watched them drag him toward the front door. They aren't going to kill you, Andre, I said calmly. Dead men don't pay debts. They are going to teach you a lesson about responsibility, a lesson I should have taught you 20 years ago. The big man stopped at the door. We will take him for a ride, he said. We will work out a payment plan. It might involve some hard labor, maybe a few broken fingers if he is late. But we will get our money. I nodded. Do what you have to do, but get him out of my house. Dad, please, Andre wailed as they hauled him down the steps. I am your son. I closed my eyes for a second. The pain was sharp, but it was necessary. You are a man, Andre, I shouted after him. Start acting like one. They threw him into the back of one of the SUVs. I heard the doors slam. I heard the tires spin on the pavement. They drove away into the night, taking my son and his debt with them. I stood in the ruined hallway. The cold night air blew in through the broken door. I was alone. Most fathers would be on their knees weeping. Most fathers would be calling the police. But I didn't call the police. The police would just arrest him for fraud and put him in a cell. These men would put him to work. They would force him to face the reality of $1 earned through sweat and pain. It was the harshest love I could give, but it was the only thing left that might save him. I walked to the kitchen. I got a broom and a dustpan. I started sweeping up the glass from the front door. Andre was gone. Chloe was in jail. The house was quiet. My hands shook slightly as I swept, not from fear, from the adrenaline leaving my body. I had done it. I had cut the cord. I looked at the empty space where Andre had cowered. I hope you survive, son, I whispered. I hope you learn. Because if you come back from this, you will be a man. And if you don't, then you were never really mine to begin with. I finished sweeping. I found a piece of plywood in the garage and nailed it over the broken door frame. The hammering sound echoed in the empty street. Bam! 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 I was securing my fortress. I was sealing the breach. I went back to my study. I sat down at my desk. I opened the drawer and looked at the ledger. I turned to a fresh page. I wrote down the date, and then I wrote debt transferred to owner, account closed. I closed the book. I turned off the lamp. Phase 5 was complete. The parasites were gone. The host was healing. But the story wasn't over. There was one loose end. Chloe. She would be out on bail eventually. Or she would find a new victim. And she would come back. Not for Andre, but for revenge. And when she did, I would be waiting. Because a man who can hand his own son over to the mob has nothing left to fear from a woman with a fake handbag and a grudge. The silence in my house after the intruders dragged my son away was heavier than concrete. It was a physical weight that pressed against my eardrums and settled deep in my chest. I had nailed a piece of plywood over the shattered doorframe, the hammering echoing like gunshots in the empty street. Now I sat in the dark kitchen, the only light coming from the street lamp outside, filtering through the blinds, painting stripes of gray and black across the table. My phone sat in the center of the table like a loaded weapon. I knew it would ring. I knew the game. They would take him to a second location. They would work him over. They would let the fear marinate until he was nothing but a raw nerve. And then they would call me. They would bank on the fact that no father can listen to his son scream without opening his checkbook. They did not know Marcus Jefferson. I poured a glass of water. My hand was steady. I watched the ripples in the glass settle. I looked at the clock on the stove. It had been 45 minutes, enough time to drive to the warehouse district down by the river, enough time to tie a man to a chair, enough time to break a finger or two. Then the phone rang. The sound was shrill and violent in the quiet house. I did not answer on the first ring. I let it ring 3 times. I wanted them to know I was not sitting by the phone wringing my hands. I wanted them to know I was not desperate. I picked up the phone and pressed the green button. I did not say hello, I just listened. At first there was only the sound of heavy breathing and a background noise that sounded like a train passing in the distance. Then I heard a whimper. It was a sound I hadn't heard since Andre was 6 years old and fell off his bike scraping his knees to the bone. It was the sound of a child who wants his daddy to make the pain go away. Dad. The word was a sob. It was broken and wet. Dad, are you there? Please say you are there. I am here, Andre, I said. My voice was calm, detached. I sounded like I was taking a call about a delayed shipment of rebar, not my son's life. Oh God, Dad, help me! Andre screamed, and the scream turned into a gurgle as if he had blood in his mouth. They are crazy. They broke my hand. They said they are going to do my knees next. You have to pay them. You have to send the money, transfer it, wire it, anything. Just make them stop. I closed my eyes. I could see it. I could see my son, the director of sales, the man who wore $3,000 suits tied to a dirty chair in a room that smelled of oil and rust. I could see the terror in his eyes. Put the man on the phone, I said. There was a scuffling sound, a grunt of pain from Andre, and then the deep, gravelly voice of the shaved-headed man came on the line. Mr. Jefferson, the man said, I hope you have had time to check your balances. Your boy here is not doing so well. He breaks easy. Soft hands. Never worked a day in his life, I bet. He has never worked, I agreed. That is part of the problem. We are running out of patience, the man said. 500,000. Plus 50 for the interest and the trouble of coming to your house. Wire it to the account number I am going to text you. Do it in the next 10 minutes or we start removing parts that he needs to walk. I took a sip of water. The cool liquid felt good against my dry throat. I listened to the background noise again. I heard the distant train whistle. I knew that whistle. It was the cargo train that ran past the old steel mill on 4th Street, the mill that had been abandoned for 10 years. Let me speak to him one last time, I said. I heard the phone being shoved back against Andre's face. Dad, Andre was crying hysterically now. Dad, please. I learned my lesson. I swear. I will change. I will do anything. Just get me out of here. I don't want to die. I am sorry about the house. I am sorry about the money. I am sorry about everything. I listened to his apology. It was sincere. Fear makes people sincere. But it was also the sincerity of a man in a foxhole. It usually evaporates the moment the shelling stops. If I bailed him out now, if I transferred that money, he would hug me, he would cry, and in a month he would be back on the gambling sites trying to win it back. He would rationalize it. He would say he had no choice. He would learn nothing except that his father was an infinite safety net. I had to cut the net. Andre, listen to me closely, I said. Yes, Dad, yes, I am listening. You are 40 years old, I said. You are a grown man. You made a choice to gamble. You made a choice to forge my signature. You made a choice to lie to these men. Yes, I know I am sorry, Andre sobbed. Those choices have costs. Son, I continued, my voice hardening, and I am not the one who owes the debt. You are. Dad, what are you saying? Andre whispered, the terror rising in his voice. I am saying that I am not paying them, I said. I am saying that you dug this hole and you are the only one who can climb out of it. No, Dad, no, Andre screamed. They will kill me. You are an adult, Andre, I said, delivering the line that I knew would haunt him for the rest of his life. Take responsibility for your own life. Click. I ended the call. I set the phone down on the table. The silence that rushed back into the room was deafening. It was the loudest silence I had ever heard. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a painful, irregular rhythm. My hands, which had been steady, were now shaking so hard I spilled water on the table. I had just done the hardest thing a father can do. I had hung up on my child while he was begging for his life. But I wasn't a monster. And I wasn't a murderer. I picked up the phone again immediately. I dialed a number I had memorized 30 years ago, a number that belonged to a man named Miller. Captain Miller, now of the Organized Crime Division. We had served in the same unit overseas. We had played poker every Tuesday for a decade. He owed me a favor. Actually, he owed me his life from a night in Da Nang, but we didn't talk about that. Miller answered on the first ring. Mac, is it time? It is time, I said, my voice thick with emotion I couldn't hide anymore. They are at the old steel mill on 4th. I heard the train whistle. We have a unit 2 blocks away, Miller said. We have been tracking the SUVs since they left your driveway. We were just waiting for your signal. We wanted to make sure they took him to the primary stash house so we could nail them for kidnapping and racketeering. Go, I said. Go now, Miller. Don't let them kill him. We won't kill him, Mac Miller promised. We will kick the door in 60 seconds from now. He is going to be terrified, but he is going to be alive. Just wait. 60 seconds, I said, closing my eyes. What Miller asked. Give them 60 seconds before you breach, I said. Mac, that is dangerous. He needs to believe it, Miller, I whispered. He needs to believe that I abandoned him. He needs to believe that he is going to die. He needs to look into the abyss without me standing between him and the edge. If you go in too soon, he will think I saved him. He will think I called the cavalry. He needs to think he is alone. There was a pause on the line. Miller understood. He knew about tough love. Copy that, Mac Miller said softly. 60 seconds. Then we hit them. I hung up the phone. I sat in the dark kitchen and I counted. 1, 2, 3. I imagined what was happening in that warehouse. The thug would be looking at the phone, realizing the money wasn't coming. He would be angry. He would turn to Andre. 10, 11, 12. Andre would be staring at the dead phone in his hand. He would be realizing that his father was gone, that the safety net was gone, that he was truly, completely alone in the world with the consequences of his actions. That realization would break him. It would shatter the narcissism and the entitlement. It would burn away the ego. 30, 31, 32. The thug would be raising the bat. He wouldn't kill him, not yet. He would want to send a message. He would aim for the legs. Andre would scream. He would scream for me, but I wouldn't answer. 45, 46. I gripped the edge of the table. Tears were running down my face now. Hot, painful tears. I loved my son. I loved him enough to let him suffer. I loved him enough to let him be broken so he could be rebuilt. 58, 59, 60. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Right now, miles away, heavy steel doors were being breached by a SWAT team. Flashbangs were detonating. Men were shouting, "Police, get on the ground." Andre was being saved. But he wasn't being saved by his daddy. He was being saved by the system. He was being saved as a victim of a crime, not as a spoiled child. He would be arrested too eventually. for the fraud, for the forgery, but he would be alive. I stood up. My legs felt weak. I walked to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. It was done. The lesson was delivered. Andre would hate me. He would tell everyone that I left him to die. He would never understand that I had been tracking him the whole time that I had police waiting outside, and I would never tell him. If I told him I called the police, he would see it as another bailout. He would think I was still protecting him. He had to believe I walked away. He had to believe that the bridge was burned. I walked to the living room and sat in my recliner. I stared at the plywood on the door. Tomorrow I would go down to the station. I would give my statement about the break-in. I would confirm that Andre forged the documents. I would press charges. It would be the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. But it was the only way to save the man he could still become. I sat in the dark and waited for Miller to call me back and tell me my son was safe. I was a father who had just thrown his child into deep water to teach him to swim, and now I had to sit on the shore and pray he didn't drown in his own resentment. The phone rang 10 minutes later. "He is safe," Miller said. "A few bruises, a broken nose. He is in shock. We are taking him to county." "Thank you," I said. "Do you want to see him?" Miller asked. "No," I said, "not tonight. Tonight, he needs to sit in a cell and think." I hung up. I was alone. The house was empty. The text message on the fridge seemed 1,000,000 years old. "Don't expect me to take care of you." "I won't, son," I whispered. "And now you know I won't take care of you either. We were even, and we were both broken. But maybe, just maybe, we were finally free. Rats are always the first to leave a sinking ship, but unlike rats, human parasites usually try to steal the silverware on their way out. 2 days after my son, Andre, was dragged out of my house by the consequences of his own actions and thrown into a holding cell at the county jail, his wife, Chloe, decided it was time to cut her losses. She did not go to the jail to visit him. She did not call a lawyer to help him. She did what people like her always do when the host organism stops providing blood. She went looking for a new host. I knew she would. Silas, my private investigator, had sent me the photos that morning. They were high-resolution images taken with a telephoto lens through the window of a 24-hour gym downtown. There was Chloe, her face buried in the neck of a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. I knew him. His name was Jax. He was her personal trainer, the one I had been paying $200 an hour for over the last 3 years. In the photos, she wasn't crying over her husband's incarceration. She was laughing. She was kissing him. She was moving on before the body was even cold. It was sickening, but it was also liberating because it confirmed everything I had ever suspected about her heart. It was a cold, dead thing that only beat for money and status. Now that Andre was a felon and a pauper, she was shedding her skin. At 2 in the afternoon, I was sitting in my living room reading a book on structural engineering. The house was quiet. The plywood on the front door was a stark reminder of the violence that had visited us, but inside everything was still. Then I heard the key turn in the lock. Chloe burst in. She was not wearing her usual designer armor. She was wearing leggings and a sweatshirt, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked frantic. She looked like a looter in a riot. She didn't even look at me. She marched straight past my chair as if I were a piece of old furniture and headed for the stairs. She was carrying 3 large duffel bags. Empty ones. I did not move. I turned the page of my book. I listened to the sounds coming from upstairs. I heard drawers being ripped open. I heard hangers clattering onto the floor. She was in the guest room, first clearing out the clothes she had brought. Then I heard her footsteps move down the hall to the master bedroom, my bedroom. I closed my book. I stood up. I walked silently to the bottom of the stairs. I heard the sound of the jewelry box opening. It was an old wooden box that I had made for Betty on our 10th anniversary. It contained her pearls, her diamond engagement ring, and the gold locket she wore every day until she died. It wasn't just jewelry. It was my life. I walked up the stairs. My steps were heavy and deliberate. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom. Chloe was sweeping the jewelry into one of the duffel bags. She wasn't looking at the pieces. She wasn't remembering the woman who wore them. She was just calculating their pawn value. She had already filled one bag with Andre's watch collection, which he had foolishly left in my safe for safekeeping months ago. Rolexes, Breitlings, things I had bought him as graduation gifts, things he had bought himself when he should have been paying his mortgage. She had taken them all. I cleared my throat. Chloe jumped. She spun around, dropping a pearl necklace on the carpet. Her eyes were wide, but they weren't fearful. They were defiant. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. "I thought you were at the police station giving a statement against your own son." "I gave my statement this morning," I said calmly. "I told them everything. Now I am asking you what you are doing with my wife's jewelry." "I am taking what is owed to me," she hissed, kicking the necklace toward the bag. "Andre owes me. He ruined my life. He lied to me, Marcus. He told me he was rich. He told me he had a trust fund. He wasted 10 years of my youth and beauty on a lie. I deserve compensation." "Compensation?" I asked, stepping into the room. "You lived in a mansion for free. You drove a Range Rover for free. You traveled the world on my dime. And now, because the party is over, you think you can rob the venue. It is marital property," she spat, zipping up the bag. "I talked to a lawyer. Since he is going to prison for fraud, I am entitled to assets for pain and suffering. I am divorcing him, Marcus. I am leaving this sinking ship, and I am taking my severance package." She grabbed the 2 heavy bags. She slung one over her shoulder and dragged the other. She looked at me with pure contempt. "Move," she said. "I have a flight to catch. Jax is waiting in the car." "Jax," I said. "The trainer. He is more of a man than your son ever was," she sneered. "He appreciates me. And he doesn't need his daddy to pay for dinner. Now get out of my way, old man." She walked toward me, expecting me to shuffle aside, expecting me to be the weak, passive observer I had been for so long. I did not move. I stood in the doorway, filling the frame. I am not a tall man, but I am broad. I spent 40 years lifting steel beams. I am rooted to the ground like an oak tree. "You can go, Chloe," I said, my voice dropping to a low rumble. "You can leave this house. You can leave this family. You can go to hell for all I care. But the bags stay." She laughed, a sharp, incredulous bark. "Are you joking? Try and stop me. I will scream. I will tell the police you assaulted me. Who are they going to believe? A fragile young woman or a bitter old man who just sent his son to jail? They will believe the evidence," I said, nodding toward the corner of the ceiling. She looked up. A small red light blinked in the smoke detector. It wasn't a smoke detector. It was a wide-angle camera I had installed the day after the party. "I have been recording for 10 minutes, I said. "Every word, every theft. It is all in the cloud, Chloe." Her face twisted into a mask of rage. She dropped the bag on her shoulder. She lunged at me. "Get out of my way," she screamed. She raised her hands to shove me. She put her palms on my chest and pushed with all her strength. She expected me to stumble. She expected me to fall and break a hip, but I didn't budge. I absorbed the force. And then instinct took over, muscle memory from 50 years ago. Before I was an engineer, I was a sergeant in the infantry. I served in the jungle. I learned hand-to-hand combat when it was a matter of life and death, not a sport. As she pushed, I grabbed her right wrist with my left hand. I stepped to the side, using her own momentum against her. I twisted her arm behind her back, bringing it up high between her shoulder blades. "It is a control hold. It is painful, but it doesn't break anything unless you fight it." Chloe shrieked. It was a sound of shock and pain. She dropped to her knees, forced down by the pressure on her shoulder. "Let go of me," she screamed, kicking backward at my shins. "You are hurting me." "Stop fighting and it won't hurt," I said calmly, holding her there. I kicked the duffel bags out of her reach. "I am calling the police," she yelled, spitting on the floor. "You don't have to," I said. "I called them 10 minutes ago. When you pulled into the driveway, I told them there was a burglary in progress. I told them the suspect was armed and dangerous." You set me up," she sobbed, realizing the trap had snapped shut. "No, Chloe," I said, leaning down so my mouth was close to her ear. "You set yourself up. You walked into my house. You stole my dead wife's jewelry. You assaulted a senior citizen. That is elder abuse. That is grand larceny. That is burglary. You are looking at 5 to 10 years. I heard the sirens then. They were close. The wail grew louder and louder until it filled the room. Blue and red lights flashed against the bedroom walls, dancing across the family photos she hadn't bothered to steal. "Please, Marcus," she begged, her fight draining away, leaving only the pathetic cowardice of a bully who has been punched back. "Please let me go. I will leave the bags. I will leave town. Just don't let them arrest me. I can't go to jail. I am too pretty for jail." "Too pretty," I repeated. I tightened my grip slightly, just enough to remind her who was in charge. "Character is what makes a person beautiful, Chloe. And you are the ugliest thing I have ever seen." I heard the front door burst open downstairs. Police announced a voice I recognized. It was Officer Miller's son, young Deputy Miller. Upstairs, I shouted without loosening my grip. "Master bedroom, suspect is restrained." Running footsteps thundered up the stairs. Deputy Miller and his partner burst into the room, guns drawn. They saw me standing there calm and steady, holding a woman half my age in a military-grade submission hold. "Mr. Jefferson." Deputy Miller lowered his weapon. "Are you all right?" "I am fine, son," I said. I handed Chloe over to them. She tried to rob me. She tried to assault me. The bags are full of stolen property. The video evidence has already been emailed to your precinct. They handcuffed her. The metal clicked shut around her wrists. She was crying now, loud, ugly sobs. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks. She looked at me with hatred but also with fear. Deep, primal fear. "Jax is outside," she screamed as they dragged her up. "He will come for me." "Jax drove away 5 minutes ago," I said, walking to the window and looking out at the empty street. He saw the police lights coming down the block. He didn't even tap the brakes. Chloe slumped. The last hope extinguished. Her lover had abandoned her just as she had abandoned her husband. It was poetic justice. They marched her out. I watched them put her in the back of the cruiser. I watched the car drive away. I was alone again. I picked up the duffel bags. I dumped them out on the bed. Betty's pearls spilled out like white tears. Andre's watches clattered onto the comforter. I sat on the edge of the bed. My heart was beating a little faster than usual, but my breathing was steady. I picked up Betty's locket. I opened it. Her picture was inside, smiling at me. "I protected it, Betty," I whispered. "I kept it safe. I put the jewelry back in the wooden box. I put the watches in a drawer. I would sell them later. I would use the money to fix the front door." I went downstairs. I made myself a sandwich. Andre was in jail. Chloe was in jail. The house was mine again. The silence was mine again. Phase 6 was complete. The cleanup was almost done. But I knew this wasn't the end. They were litigious people. They were people who believed that if they couldn't win by force, they could win by law. They would find a lawyer. They would try to sue me. They would try to claim I was incompetent again. They would try to say I was dangerous. Let them try. I took a bite of my sandwich. It tasted good. It tasted like victory. I had my health, I had my money, and I had the best lawyer in the state on speed dial. Tomorrow the legal war would begin. But tonight I was going to sleep with both eyes closed, because the monsters were in cages where they belonged, and the gatekeeper was finally off duty. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and cheap cologne, the kind of scent that tries to mask the decay underneath. It was 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I was sitting at the defendant's table wearing my charcoal suit and cleaning my glasses with a microfiber cloth. My hands were steady. Beside me sat Lucinda, my attorney, who looked like a panther resting in the shade, waiting for a gazelle to make a mistake. Across the aisle sat my son Andre and his wife Chloe. They were an interesting pair to watch. Just 48 hours ago, Andre had been dragged out of my house by loan sharks, and Chloe had been arrested for grand larceny. Yet here they were, sitting shoulder to shoulder, holding hands like a couple on their honeymoon. Andre was out on bail, his face bruised and swollen from his night with the collectors, but he had managed to find a suit that hid the worst of it. Chloe was out too, presumably because she found a bondsman who took jewelry as collateral, or maybe she found another Jax. They looked at me with a mixture of fear and arrogance. They hated each other, I knew that, but they loved my money more than they hated each other. They had formed a temporary alliance of greed, a coalition of the desperate. Their lawyer was a man named Mr. Sterling. He was young, flashy, and wore a watch that was too big for his wrist. He stood up to address Judge Henderson, a woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen every variety of human nonsense this city could produce. "Your Honor," Mr. Sterling began, his voice booming with theatrical concern, "we are here today with heavy hearts. My clients, Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson, are petitioning for an emergency guardianship over the person and estate of Mr. Marcus Jefferson." He pointed a finger at me. I put my glasses back on and looked at him. "Mr. Jefferson is 75 years old," Sterling continued, "and in recent weeks his mental faculties have declined precipitously. We believe he is suffering from advanced Alzheimer's disease, or perhaps a vascular dementia. He has become paranoid, he has become erratic, and most worryingly, he has become dangerous to himself and others." "Objection," Lucinda said softly, not even standing up. "Speculation, sustained," the judge said. "Stick to the facts, counselor. The facts are terrifying." "Your Honor," Sterling said, "last week, Mr. Jefferson cut the power to his own home during a social event, endangering dozens of guests. He has been hoarding money, refusing to pay legitimate bills, and behaving with extreme aggression. Just 2 days ago, he physically assaulted his daughter-in-law, Chloe, leaving her bruised and traumatized. Chloe dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue. It was a good performance. He is wasting the estate, Sterling concluded. He is burning through assets that are necessary for his own care. He is throwing money away out of spite. My clients simply want to protect him. They want to ensure he is in a safe facility where he can get the help he needs while they manage the complex financial portfolio he is no longer capable of understanding. I listened to them paint me as a senile invalid. It hurt. It hurt not because it was true, but because my son sat there nodding his head. He knew I was the sharpest engineer in the room. He knew I could calculate the load-bearing capacity of a bridge in my head, but he was willing to erase my identity to pay his gambling debts. Andre took the stand first. He limped slightly, playing up his injuries. My father, he isn't the man he used to be. Andre testified, his voice trembling with fake emotion. He forgets things. He gets angry over nothing. When I try to help him with his finances, he gets violent. He thinks people are stealing from him. It is classic paranoia. I just want him safe, Your Honor. I just want my dad back. The judge looked at me. She studied my face. She saw an old black man sitting quietly. She probably saw hundreds of men like me every year, men whose minds had betrayed them. She looked sympathetic to Andre. Then it was Lucinda's turn. She stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She walked over to the podium. She did not look at Andre. She looked at the judge. Your Honor. Lucinda said, her voice clear and crisp like a bell. The petitioners claim that Mr. Jefferson is incompetent. They claim he is suffering from dementia. They claim they are motivated solely by love and concern. She picked up a document from her table. We would like to submit Exhibit A. This is a certificate of mental competency signed, dated, and notarized just 4 days ago. Sterling jumped up. Objection. We haven't seen this doctor's credentials. The doctor in question, Lucinda said, smiling. A shark's smile is Dr. Lawrence Finch, the very doctor that Mr. Andre Jefferson recommended to my client. The doctor who has treated the family for years. Andre went pale. He looked at Chloe. Chloe stopped dabbing her eyes. Dr. Finch conducted a thorough examination. Lucinda continued, handing the paper to the bailiff. He certified that Marcus Jefferson is of sound mind, excellent memory, and fully capable of managing his own affairs. In fact, his notes describe Mr. Jefferson as having the cognitive function of a man half his age. The judge read the document. She raised an eyebrow. This seems to be in order, Mr. Sterling. Your own client's doctor disagrees with your diagnosis. But, Sterling stammered, looking at Andre, my client said, We are not done. Your Honor, Lucinda interrupted. The petitioners also claim that Mr. Jefferson is paranoid. They claim his belief that they are plotting against him is a symptom of his illness. She picked up a small USB drive. She held it up to the light. We would like to play Exhibit B. This is an audio recording taken from the guest bedroom of Mr. Jefferson's home on the night of the power outage. Chloe gasped. She stood up halfway, then sat back down, realizing she had nowhere to go. Is this admissible? Sterling asked, desperate now. It was recorded in the common areas of Mr. Jefferson's own home, where he has no expectation of privacy from himself, Lucinda argued, and it proves intent to commit fraud. I will allow it, the judge said. Lucinda plugged the drive into the court's AV system. The speakers crackled. Then Chloe's voice filled the courtroom loud and clear. He is unstable. We are doing him a favor. And once he is declared incompetent, the new will he probably wrote is void. We get it all, Andre. The courtroom went silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a second. Then Andre's voice came on. He will never sign it. No doctor is going to sign off on that. He is sharp as a tack. And then Chloe again. Finch owes me. If we tell him Marcus is dangerous, he will sign the certificate. Lucinda stopped the recording. She looked at Andre and Chloe. They were frozen. They looked like deer in the headlights of a semi-truck. The mask of the loving family had been ripped off, revealing the ugly, rotting greed underneath. Paranoia, Your Honor? Lucinda asked. Or preparation? My client wasn't imagining a conspiracy. He was living in the middle of one. Sterling sat down. He put his head in his hands. He knew he had lost. He knew he had been played by his own clients. The judge stared at Andre and Chloe. Her expression shifted from professional detachment to cold anger. She was a guardian of the law, and she hated people who tried to weaponize her court against the vulnerable. "Stand up," she ordered. Andre and Chloe stood up. They were shaking. "I have heard enough," the judge said. "This petition is denied with prejudice. That means you cannot file it again, ever." She slammed her gavel down, but she wasn't finished. "Mr. Jefferson," she said, looking at Andre, "you came into my courtroom and lied under oath. You tried to use the state to strip a citizen of his civil rights for your own financial gain. That is not just immoral, it is perjury, and it is attempted fraud." "But, Your Honor," Andre squeaked. "Silence," the judge roared. "I am referring this transcript to the district attorney's office. I suggest you get a criminal lawyer, Mr. Sterling, because you are going to need one. And as for the allegations of assault," she looked at me, "Mr. Marcus Jefferson appears to be a man defending his home from intruders. The restraining order requested by the defendant against the plaintiffs is granted. 500 yards. If you go near his house again, you go to jail. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Andre whispered. "Get out of my sight," the judge said. They practically ran out of the courtroom. Chloe was sobbing real tears this time, tears of terror. Andre looked like a man walking to the gallows. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I shook Lucinda's hand. "Good work," I said. "Just doing my job." "Mac," she said, smiling, "you gave me good ammunition." I walked out of the courtroom. Andre and Chloe were arguing in the hallway. "It is your fault," Chloe was screaming. "You said Finch was safe. You said he was senile. He recorded us," Andre yelled back. "He bugged the room. He is a monster." I walked past them. I stopped for a moment. "I am not a monster," I said. My voice echoed in the marble corridor. "I am an engineer. I fix problems. And you too, you were a structural defect." They looked at me. They didn't have anything left to say. They were bankrupt. They were exposed. They were facing criminal charges. I walked out of the courthouse and into the fresh air. The sun was shining. The city noise sounded like music. I got into my truck. I sat there for a moment, breathing it in. The freedom. They had tried to take my mind. They had tried to take my dignity, but they forgot one thing. You cannot break a man who has built himself from the ground up. You can only chip the paint. I started the engine. Phase 7 was complete. The legal battle was won, but the war wasn't over. I still had to evict them from the house. I still had to clean up the mess. But first I was going to get a cheeseburger, a double cheeseburger with bacon. Because I was a free man, and I could spend my money on whatever I wanted. I drove away, leaving my son and his wife standing on the steps of the courthouse, watching their future drive away in a rusted Ford pickup. They had wanted to inherit my life. Instead, they inherited my wrath. And the ledger was finally balancing out. Defense is a strategy for people who hope the enemy will eventually get tired and go home. But I knew my son Andre and his wife Chloe would never get tired, because parasites do not stop eating until the host is dead. After the victory in the courtroom, where the judge tossed their guardianship petition into the trash like a used napkin, I did not go home to celebrate. I did not pop champagne. I went to the office of the county sheriff. Sheriff Grady has been my friend for 30 years. We fish together on Sundays when the base are running. He is a man who respects the law but respects justice even more. When I walked into his office, he didn't ask why I was there, he just asked when we were moving out. He knew the paperwork was in order. He knew the eviction notice had been filed electronically the moment the gavel came down in court. You see, Andre thought he owned that mansion in the Heights. He told everyone he owned it. He strutted around the pool deck like a feudal lord surveying his lands. But he never read the fine print of the trust documents. The house was not titled to him. It was titled to Jefferson Holdings, LLC, a company I created, a company I controlled. Andre was technically a tenant on a lease-to-own agreement, an agreement that had a very specific clause regarding default. Miss one payment and the lease is void. Miss two and eviction is immediate. He had missed 3 because I had stopped making them for him. I drove my rusted Ford pickup to the Heights. I looked out of place among the manicured lawns and the imported fountains. The security guard at the gate tried to stop me until he saw the sheriff's cruiser behind me and the moving truck behind him. It was a caravan of consequences rolling down the boulevard. We pulled up to the house. It looked magnificent in the afternoon light. A monument to excess, a temple of ego, and inside 2 people were probably trying to figure out how to spin their legal defeat into a social media victory. I parked the truck. I did not get out. I watched Sheriff Grady walk up the long driveway. He adjusted his belt. He adjusted his hat. He pressed the doorbell. I could see the video feed on my phone because I still had administrative access to the security system. I saw Andre open the door. He was wearing a bathrobe and holding a glass of what looked like whiskey. It was 2 in the afternoon. Sheriff Andre said, his voice coming through the tiny speaker on my phone. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Are you here to arrest my father?" Did he finally snap? Sheriff Grady shook his head. He held up a piece of paper. It was a neon orange sticker, the kind they put on condemned buildings. "I am here to execute a writ of possession," Mr. Jefferson Grady said, his voice booming. "You are in breach of your lease agreement. The owner has exercised his right to immediate reclamation. You have 15 minutes to vacate the premises." Andre laughed. It was a nervous, brittle sound. "The owner. I am the owner. My dad pays the mortgage, but the house is mine. It is in the trust." "The trust has been dissolved," son Grady said, stepping forward. "The property has reverted to the holding company, and the CEO of that company is sitting in that truck right there." Andre looked past the sheriff. He saw my truck. He saw me sitting behind the wheel, my face shadowed by the brim of my baseball cap. He saw the moving truck idling behind me. "This is illegal," he screamed. "You have to give us 30 days. You have to give us notice." "Read your contract," Grady said, handing him the orange paper. "Clause 14, Section B. Immediate termination upon insolvency. You are insolvent, Andre. Now step aside. The movers are on the clock." Chloe appeared behind Andre. She was wearing a silk kimono and looked like she had been crying for hours. "What is going on?" she shrieked. "Who are these people?" "They are evicting us," Andre whispered. "He is throwing us out." Chloe looked at the truck. She looked at me. Her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. She ran past Andre and down the driveway. She came right up to my window. She pounded on the glass with her fists. "You evil old man," she screamed. "You cannot do this. My clothes are in there. My jewelry. My life." I rolled down the window 2 inches, just enough for my voice to carry. "You have 15 minutes, Chloe," I said. "I suggest you grab what you can carry. The rest goes to the curb. And since it is public property, once it hits the street, I cannot guarantee it will be there long." She stared at me. She saw that I wasn't bluffing. She saw the movers jumping out of the truck wearing work gloves and grim expressions. These weren't white glove movers who wrap china in bubble wrap. These were clean-out crews. They were guys who clear foreclosures. They moved fast, and they didn't care about scratching the paint. Chloe turned and ran back into the house, screaming at Andre to do something. But Andre did nothing. He stood in the doorway, paralyzed, watching his kingdom crumble. Sheriff Grady waved the movers in. They marched past Andre like a colony of ants. They went into the living room. They went into the kitchen. They went upstairs. Then the exodus began. It wasn't a dignified removal. It was a purge. They brought out the white leather sofa Andre loved so much. They didn't carry it gently. They dragged it. They dumped it on the grass near the curb. They brought out the 60-inch television. They leaned it against the mailbox. They brought out armfuls of Chloe's clothes, designer dresses, silk scarves, coats with fur collars. They didn't put them in boxes. They dumped them in a pile on the asphalt. It looked like a colorful mountain of greed. Andre ran back and forth trying to stop them, trying to grab things. "Be careful with that painting," he yelled. "That is an original." The mover ignored him and leaned the painting against a fire hydrant. I sat in my truck and watched. I felt no joy. I felt no satisfaction. I felt the grim duty of a surgeon cutting out gangrene. It was ugly. It was messy. But it had to be done to save the patient. The patient wasn't Andre. The patient was the truth. The sky began to darken. Heavy gray clouds rolled in from the west, blocking out the sun. The air turned cold. A drop of rain hit my windshield, then another. The movers worked faster. They cleared the house in 40 minutes. The lawn was covered in debris. It looked like a yard sale from hell. Lamps, rugs, kitchen appliances. The espresso machine Andre used to brag about. It was all sitting there exposed. Chloe ran out carrying 2 suitcases stuffed to bursting. She was wearing boots now and a coat. She looked at the pile of her belongings on the wet grass. "My shoes," she wailed. "My Louboutins, they are getting wet." She tried to cover the pile with a blanket, but the wind whipped it away. Sheriff Grady walked out of the front door. He did a final sweep. "The house is clear, Mr. Jefferson," he said to me. I nodded. "Lock it up." Grady took a padlock from his belt. He looped it through the handles of the grand double doors. He snapped it shut. The sound was final, like a gunshot. Andre stood on the porch. He was still wearing his bathrobe and slippers. He hadn't packed a bag. He hadn't saved anything. He had spent the whole time arguing with reality, and reality had won. "You have to leave the property, son," Grady said, putting a hand on Andre's shoulder. "Now." Andre looked at the padlock. He looked at the orange sticker on the door. He looked at his wife, who was frantically trying to shove a toaster into a Louis Vuitton bag. He walked down the steps. He stepped onto the wet grass. His slippers squished in the mud. He walked to the middle of the lawn and stood there surrounded by the wreckage of his fake life. The rain started to fall harder, a steady cold downpour that soaked through his robe in seconds. His hair plastered to his skull. He looked small. He looked frail. I started the engine of my truck. The vibration ran through the chassis. Andre looked up. He looked at me through the rain-slicked windshield. His eyes were hollow. He looked like a man who had just woken up from a coma to find the world had ended. "Dad," he mouthed. I could see the word form on his lips. I put the truck in gear. I did not look away. I wanted him to remember this moment. I wanted him to burn it into his memory. The rain, the cold, the shame. This was rock bottom. This was the foundation. You cannot build a skyscraper on a swamp. You have to dig down to the bedrock. And I had just dug him down. Chloe ran to him screaming something about the car keys, but he didn't answer her. He just stared at the house. The house that was never his. I pulled away. I drove down the street past the neighbors who were watching from their windows, past the security guard who looked away as I passed. I checked my rearview mirror one last time. I saw Andre standing alone in the rain. The house behind him was dark. The door was locked. The gate was closed. He was homeless. He was broke. He was alone. It was the cruelest thing I had ever done, and it was the most loving thing I had ever done. I turned the corner and he disappeared from view. Phase 12 was complete. The tower had fallen. Now came the long, hard winter. I drove home to my small house with the plywood door. It wasn't a mansion. It didn't have marble floors. But it was warm. It was dry, and it was mine. I hoped that one day Andre would understand the difference, but for now he had to learn how to survive the storm without an umbrella, because I had taken the umbrella away. Gravity is a relentless force, and once momentum shifts downward, it is almost impossible to stop the slide. My son Andre learned this lesson in the span of 48 hours. When the sheriff put the padlock on the doors of the mansion, Andre didn't just lose a place to sleep, he lost his identity. The facade he had carefully constructed over a decade, the image of the golden boy, the self-made tycoon, crumbled into dust the moment his feet hit the wet pavement of the street. The first domino to fall after the house was his career. You see, the world of high-end sales is built on perception. It is a world of smoke and mirrors where confidence is the currency. But word travels fast in this city, especially when the foreclosure notice is plastered on the front door of a man who bragged about his portfolio. Andre showed up to his office the morning after the eviction wearing the same wrinkled suit he had slept in. He smelled of fear and damp wool. He thought he could salvage his job. He thought he could charm his way out of the abyss. He was wrong. His boss, a man who valued reputation over loyalty, met him at the elevator with a cardboard box and a security escort. It wasn't just the rumors. It was the background check I had quietly triggered by alerting the credit bureaus of the fraud. Andre was now a liability. A man with a credit score in the double digits and a pending criminal investigation for forgery is not the face you want selling luxury assets. They walked him out of the building in front of the colleagues he used to belittle. He stood on the sidewalk holding a box containing a stapler and a photo of a wife who was already planning her exit. And then came Chloe. I knew Chloe would leave. I predicted it the moment I met her. She was a woman who required a certain climate to survive, and that climate was air-conditioned luxury. Poverty was toxic to her. It happened in the parking lot of a Motel 6 on the outskirts of town. Andre had managed to scrape together enough cash from pawned cufflinks to afford a room for 2 nights. He parked the SUV, the only asset they had left, because the repo man hadn't found it yet. He turned to her, probably looking for a shred of comfort, probably hoping that the wedding vows meant something, for richer or for poorer. My private investigator Silas captured the moment from across the street. He didn't need audio for me to know what was said. The body language screamed it. Chloe didn't get out of the car. She sat there staring straight ahead, her face a mask of cold fury. Andre reached for her hand. She pulled away as if he were contagious. She reached into her purse. She didn't pull out a tissue to dry his tears. She pulled out a thick envelope, legal size. She opened the door and stepped out into the drizzle. She threw the envelope onto the hood of the SUV. It landed with a wet slap. It was a petition for divorce citing irreconcilable differences and financial fraud. She had been busy. Andre got out. He ran around the car. He grabbed her arm. He begged. I could see his mouth moving, forming the words, "Please and baby, and I can fix this." Chloe shook him off. She didn't scream. She didn't make a scene. She simply looked at him with eyes dead of any emotion and pointed to a dark sedan waiting at the exit of the lot. It was Jax, the trainer. He had come back not to save her, but to collect his prize now that she was single. She walked away. She got into the sedan. She didn't look back. Andre stood alone in the parking lot. The rain was falling harder now, soaking the envelope on the hood, blurring the ink of his marriage's death warrant. He slumped against the grill of the car and slid down until he was sitting on the asphalt, his head in his hands. He was crying. He was broken. But the world didn't stop because Andre Jefferson was sad. The world kept turning and it kept demanding payment. The next phase of his education was the most brutal. It was the phase of survival. Andre ran out of money 3 days later. The motel kicked him out. He had no friends. The people he had partied with, the people who drank his champagne and laughed at his jokes, they stopped answering his texts the moment the news broke. He was radioactive. He was a loser. And in their world, being a loser is a contagious disease. He moved into the SUV. He parked it under a bridge near the industrial district, trying to stay out of sight of the repo trucks that were prowling the city like sharks. He learned quickly that a luxury SUV is a terrible bedroom. The leather seats that used to feel so soft were cold and hard at 3 a.m. The engine couldn't run all night because he had no money for gas, so he froze. He huddled under a coat that used to be his dry cleaning, sleeping in the fetal position, trying to preserve body heat. Hunger is a patient teacher. It waits. It gnaws. I drove by his spot 4 days into his homelessness. I stayed in my truck across the street, hidden by the shadows. I watched my son. He was sitting on the curb. He looked 20 years older. His beard was patchy and gray. His clothes were stained. He was holding a plastic bag from a discount bakery. He pulled out a bagel. It was hard. I could tell by the way he had to tear at it with his teeth. It was day-old bread sold for pennies. He ate it with a ferocity that made my stomach turn. He ate it like an animal. He picked up the crumbs that fell onto his dirty jeans and ate those too. This was the man who used to send steaks back to the kitchen if they were slightly overcooked. This was the man who complained if his wine wasn't breathed properly. Now he was eating stale bread under a bridge while the city traffic roared overhead. He looked up at the sky. His face was streaked with grime and tears. He looked angry. He looked scared. But mostly he looked confused. He couldn't understand how the universe had turned on him so completely. He didn't realize that the universe hadn't turned. It had just corrected itself. I remembered the text message. It was burned into my retina. I have my own life. I watched him shiver on that curb and I thought, well, Andre, here it is. This is your life. This is the life you built without me. It is small, it is cold, and it is lonely. He stood up and walked to the river railing. He looked down at the dark water. For a second, my heart stopped. I put my hand on the door handle, ready to run, ready to break my own rule and save him. But he didn't jump. He just spat into the water. He was too cowardly to jump. Or maybe he was too angry. He walked back to the SUV. He opened the back door and rummaged through a pile of trash looking for something. He pulled out a bottle of water. It was half empty. He drank it in one gulp. Then his phone rang. He froze. I saw his shoulders tense. He looked at the screen. He didn't answer it. He threw the phone into the passenger seat as if it were a grenade. It was the collectors, the loan sharks. They were calling to remind him of the payment plan. They were calling to tell him that the clock was ticking. Andre curled up in the driver's seat. He locked the doors. He looked out the window, his eyes darting at every shadow. He was hunted. He was living in a state of constant adrenaline terror. Every car that passed slowly was a potential hitman. Every footstep on the pavement was a potential beating. He was learning the value of safety. He was learning that safety isn't free. It is bought with loyalty and honesty, and he was bankrupt in both. I watched him for an hour. I watched him try to sleep. He would doze off for a few minutes, then jerk awake, gasping, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. It was painful to watch. It was a physical ache in my chest to see my flesh and blood reduced to a frightened animal living in a metal box. I wanted to drive over there. I wanted to knock on the window. I wanted to give him a blanket and a hot meal, but I couldn't. If I saved him now, I would kill him later. If I saved him now, he would never learn the most important lesson of all, that he was capable of surviving. Or he wasn't. He had to find his own bottom. He had to hit the bedrock. I put my truck in gear and drove away slowly. I left him there in the dark. The next day I went to the grocery store. I bought a loaf of bread, some peanut butter, and a few apples. I drove back to the bridge. Andre wasn't there. The SUV was gone. My heart hammered. Had they found him? Had the repo man taken the truck? Then I saw him. He was walking down the street a few blocks away. He was carrying a sign, a piece of cardboard he had ripped from a box. It said, "Will work for food." I stopped the truck. I stared. He wasn't begging for money. He was offering labor. It was a small thing, a tiny flicker of dignity in the ashes of his ego. But it was there. He stood on the corner holding the sign. People drove past him. They ignored him. They looked at him with the same disdain he used to have for the homeless. He was invisible. I watched a man in a pickup truck stop. He rolled down the window. He pointed to a pile of bricks in the bed of his truck. He said something. Andre nodded vigorously. He climbed into the back of the stranger's truck. He was going to work. Manual labor. The kind of work he used to mock. I felt a lump in my throat. It wasn't pride yet. It was hope. A fragile, thin hope. I drove to the spot where he had been sleeping. I left the bag of groceries behind a concrete pillar where I knew he would find it when he came back. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave money. Just food. I drove home. The house was quiet. The plywood door was still there. I sat in my chair and looked at the empty space where the television used to be. Andre was suffering. He was in hell. But for the first time in 40 years, he was actually living his own life. He was fighting for his survival. And that was the only way he was ever going to become a man I could respect. The text message on the fridge didn't make me angry anymore. It made me sad. But it also made me resolute. "You wanted your own life, son," I whispered to the dark room. "Now you have it. Don't waste it." I went to sleep. I knew the hardest part was still to come. He would come back eventually. He would crawl back. And when he did, I had to be strong enough to open the door but keep the wallet closed. Because the only thing worse than abandoning your child is enabling their destruction. And I was done being the architect of his demise. Hunger is a very specific kind of teacher because it does not allow you to procrastinate and it does not listen to excuses. For my son Andre, hunger had become his only companion. It had been 3 weeks since he was evicted from the mansion, 3 weeks since his wife left him, and 3 weeks since he realized that the world does not give free samples to men who wear ruined suits. I had watched him from a distance. I had seen him sleeping in his car, and I had seen him working manual labor for strangers, but I had not intervened. I was letting the cement harden. I was letting the reality set in. It was a Tuesday evening when he finally came home. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across my front lawn, the lawn I mowed myself every Saturday. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for a beef stew. The smell of searing meat and onions filled the house, a smell of warmth and safety. Then I saw him through the window. He did not drive up in a Porsche. He did not stomp up the walkway demanding money. He was walking up the driveway, dragging his feet. He looked like a scarecrow. His clothes were the same ones he had been wearing for days, stained with grease and dirt. His face was gaunt, his beard was patchy and unkempt, and his eyes were hollow dark pits of exhaustion. He stopped at the front gate. He did not open it. He just stood there, gripping the metal bars, looking at the house as if it were a cathedral he was not worthy to enter. I put down my knife. I wiped my hands on a towel. I walked to the front door. I opened it and stood on the porch. The air was cool. Andre saw me. He flinched. He looked like he wanted to run, but his legs were too weak. He let go of the gate and fell to his knees on the concrete. He didn't care about his pants. He didn't care about his dignity. He just collapsed. "Dad." He croaked. His voice was a dry, raspy whisper. "Dad, please." I walked down the steps. I walked down the driveway until I was standing in front of him. I did not help him up. I did not hug him. I stood there like a foreman inspecting a collapsed tunnel. "I am sorry," he sobbed, putting his face in his hands. "I am so sorry. I was wrong. I was arrogant. I was stupid. Please, Dad, I am hungry. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Just give me something. Anything. $1. A piece of bread. Please forgive me." I looked down at him. This was the moment every parent dreads and every parent hopes for, the moment the child returns. But the prodigal son does not get the fatted calf just because he showed up. Not in my house. Not after what he did. Forgiveness is not a feeling, Andre. Forgiveness is an action, and right now your words are just wind. "I am hungry," he wept. "I am starving." I looked at his hands. They were dirty, but they were still soft. They were still the hands of a man who typed on a keyboard and signed fake checks. They were not the hands of a man who understood the cost of a meal. I turned around and walked back toward the house. "Dad, please don't leave me," he screamed, crawling a few inches forward. "Come with me," I said without looking back. I walked around the side of the house to the tool shed. I heard him shuffling behind me, panting like a wounded dog. I opened the shed door. The smell of oil and potting soil drifted out. I reached into the corner and grabbed a shovel. It was a heavy spade with a wooden handle smooth from years of my own sweat. I walked back out and threw the shovel on the ground at his feet. It landed with a heavy clanking sound. Andre looked at the shovel, then at me. He looked confused. "You want to eat?" I asked. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes. Dad, please." "Then you work," I said, pointing to the back corner of the garden where the soil was hard and full of rocks. "I need that plot turned over. I am planting winter vegetables. The ground needs to be tilled 3 feet deep." Andre stared at the dirt. He swayed slightly on his feet. "I pay $10 an hour," I said. "That is the rate for unskilled labor. You do a good job, you get paid. You get paid, you eat." "But Dad, I am weak," Andre stammered. "I can barely stand." "You have enough energy to beg. You have enough energy to dig," I said, crossing my arms. "This is the deal, Andre. No handouts, no charity. You want a meal, you earn it. You want forgiveness, you earn that too." The clock starts now. I turned and went back into the house. I went back to the kitchen and continued chopping my vegetables. I moved to the window where I could see the garden. For 10 minutes, Andre just stood there looking at the shovel. He was crying. He was probably hating me. He was probably thinking I was a monster. Good, let him hate me. Hate is a fuel. Then he bent down. He picked up the shovel. His hands were shaking. He stuck the blade into the hard earth and pushed. It didn't move much. He was weak. He was out of shape. But he pushed again. I watched him. I watched my son, the executive, the man who wore Italian loafers, struggle with a piece of wood and steel. He dug. He lifted a shovelful of dirt and threw it aside. He dug again. I went back to my stew. I added the potatoes. I added the carrots. I seasoned the broth. The smell wafted out through the open window, drifting toward the garden. It was a cruel motivation, but it was effective. An hour passed. I checked the window. Andre was still digging. He had taken off his ruined jacket. His shirt was soaked with sweat. He was moving slowly, but he was moving. 2 hours passed. The sun went down. I turned on the porch light so he could see. He was still there. He was stumbling now. He fell once, dropping to his knees in the dirt. He stayed there for a long time, breathing hard. I thought he was going to quit. I thought he was going to walk away. But he got up. He grabbed the handle. He kept digging. I saw him look at his hands. I knew what he was seeing. Blisters. Big, fluid-filled bubbles rising on his palms where the friction of the wood was tearing his soft skin apart. Then I saw him wince. One of them had popped. I could see him wipe his hand on his pants, leaving a smear of blood and dirt. He was bleeding for his dinner. Finally. At 3 hours, I walked out onto the back porch. The stew was ready. It was thick and rich. "Time," I called out. Andre stopped. He leaned on the shovel, trembling. He looked like a coal miner. He was covered in filth. His face was streaked with mud and sweat. He breathed in ragged gasps. He dropped the shovel. He walked toward the porch. He held out his hands. They were raw. They were red and bleeding. The skin was peeled back in jagged strips. I looked at his work. He had turned over a good patch of earth. It wasn't perfect. It was messy. But it was done. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. I took out 3 $10 bills. $30. I handed them to him. $30, I said. You worked 3 hours. Andre looked at the money. He took it with his trembling, bleeding hands. He stared at the bills as if they were alien artifacts. He had thrown away thousands of dollars on poker hands. He had spent hundreds on dinners he didn't eat. But he looked at these 3 crumpled bills with a reverence I had never seen before. He had earned this. It wasn't a gift. It wasn't a trust fund. It was his labor converted into value. "Thank you," he whispered. His voice was thick. I pointed to the hose on the side of the house. "Wash up," I said. "You are not coming into my kitchen looking like that." He nodded. He walked to the hose. He turned it on. The cold water hit his raw hands and he hissed in pain, but he scrubbed them. He washed his face. He washed the mud from his neck. Then he came up the steps. He stood at the door waiting. He didn't barge in. He waited for an invitation. "Come in," I said, holding the door open. He walked into the kitchen. The smell of the stew hit him, and his stomach let out a loud growl. He sat at the table. He sat in the chair he used to sit in when he was a boy doing his homework. I took a bowl. I ladled a huge portion of stew. Meat, potatoes, carrots, rich brown gravy. I cut a thick slice of cornbread and put a pat of butter on it. I placed it in front of him. "That will be $10, I said, holding out my hand. Andre looked at me. He didn't argue. He didn't say that was expensive for a bowl of soup. He reached into his pocket and handed me one of the $10 bills he had just earned. I took it. I put it in my pocket. "Eat," I said. He picked up the spoon. His hand was shaking so bad he spilled a little. He brought the spoon to his mouth. He tasted it. He closed his eyes. A tear leaked out and ran down his dirty cheek. It is good," he choked out. "It is the best thing I have ever tasted. It tastes good because you paid for it," I said, sitting down opposite him with my own bowl. "It tastes good because that salt in the broth isn't just salt. It is your sweat, Andre." He ate. He ate like a starving man, but he also ate with a strange new respect. He scraped the bowl clean. He used the cornbread to wipe up every drop of gravy. When he was done, he sat back and let out a long breath. The color was returning to his face. I looked at his hands resting on the table. The blood had dried. The blisters were open wounds. "Those hands are going to hurt tomorrow," I said. "I know," he said, looking at them. "Good," I said. "Pain is memory. Every time you open your hand tomorrow, you are going to remember this stew. You are going to remember that you survived." He looked up at me. His eyes were clear for the first time in years. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement was burned away by the friction of the shovel. "Dad," he said softly, Can I come back tomorrow to finish the garden?" I looked at him. I saw the desperation, but I also saw a spark of something else. Determination. "The rate is still $10 an hour," I said, "and the price of soup might go up. I will work harder," he said. "I will do better." "We will see," I said. I stood up. I took his empty bowl to the sink. "You can sleep in the shed tonight," I said. "There are blankets in the bin. It is warm enough." "The shed," he asked. "I am not letting you in the house, Andre," I said, turning to face him. "Not yet. You lost that privilege. You are an employee right now, not a resident." He nodded slowly. He understood. He didn't argue. "Okay," he said. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you for the job." He stood up. He walked to the door. He paused. "I am sorry," he said again. "I know," I said. "But sorry doesn't plant vegetables, Andre. Digging does." He walked out into the night. I watched him go to the shed. I watched him close the door. I washed the dishes. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was relief. My son was sleeping in a shed. He had bleeding hands. He had $20 to his name, but he was alive. And for the first time in his life, he was an honest man. I took the $10 bill from my pocket. I smoothed it out on the counter. It was dirty. It had a smudge of Andre's blood on the corner. I looked at it. It was the most valuable piece of currency I had ever held. It was the first installment of his repayment. Not the money he owed the bank, the debt he owed to his own soul. I turned off the lights. The garden was dark, but the earth was turned. The seeds could go in tomorrow. We were planting again. It would be a long season, but at least we were finally working the soil. They say that a bad penny always turns up, but in my experience, a bad person turns up even faster, especially when they smell money. It had been a month since the eviction and the arrest. My house was quiet again. My son Andre was living in the tool shed, working off his debt to his soul, one blister at a time. The garden was turned, the vegetables were planted, and for the first time in years I felt a sense of rhythm returning to my life. I thought the storm had passed, I thought the debris had been cleared, but Chloe was not done. She was a creature of opportunity, and she had found one last card to play, one last desperate gamble to force her way back into the fortress I had secured. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was sitting on the porch watching Andre quietly weeding the carrot patch. He looked different, thinner, harder. He wasn't wearing a suit, he was wearing old coveralls. He wasn't looking at his phone, he was looking at the dirt. He was learning. Then a taxi pulled up to the gate. Chloe stepped out. She looked different too, but not in a good way. She was wearing a loose flowing dress that looked like something a nun would wear. She had no makeup on. Her hair was down and unstyled. She was playing a role I recognized immediately. The repentant mother, the Madonna of the suburbs. She did not look at Andre working in the dirt. She looked straight at me sitting on the porch. She placed a hand on her stomach, a protective theatrical gesture. She walked up the driveway. Andre stopped working. He stood up leaning on his hoe watching his wife approach. He didn't move to hug her. He didn't speak. He just watched. Chloe stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. She looked up at me with eyes that were filled with manufactured tears. "Marcus," she said, her voice trembling just the right amount. "We need to talk. It is important. It is about the future." I took a sip of my lemonade. The glass was cold and sweating in the heat. "I don't think we have anything to talk about, Chloe," I said. "The last time we spoke, you were in handcuffs screaming that you were too pretty for jail. Did the judge disagree?" "I made a mistake," she said quickly, brushing away the memory of her felony. "I was stressed. I was not myself. But that doesn't matter now, because something has happened. Something wonderful." She rubbed her stomach again. She took a step up. "I am pregnant, Marcus." Andre dropped his hoe. It hit the ground with a dull thud. "What did you say?" Andre whispered. Chloe turned to him. Her face softened into a mask of pity. "I am pregnant, Andre. I found out yesterday. I am carrying your child. I am carrying a Jefferson." She looked back at me. A smile played on her lips, a triumphant smile. "You can kick me out, Marcus. You can call the police. But you cannot turn your back on your own flesh and blood. This baby is your grandson. He is the heir to everything you built. And he needs a home. He needs security. He needs his grandfather's money to ensure he has a good life." I looked at her. I looked at her stomach. I looked at the performance she was giving. It was Oscar-worthy. If I were a weaker man, if I were a sentimental fool, I might have opened the door. I might have written a check right there. A baby changes everything. A baby is a fresh start. But I am not a sentimental fool. I am an engineer. I deal in facts. I deal in data. And the data did not add up. I stood up slowly. I walked to the edge of the porch. "Is that so?" I asked. "A Jefferson heir." "Yes," Chloe said, gaining confidence. She thought she had found the crack in the armor. She thought she had won. "I know we have had our differences, Marcus, but this is bigger than us. This is family. You have to support us now. The law says so. Grandparents have obligations, and Andre needs to come back inside. We need to be a family again, for the baby." Andre looked at me. He looked terrified. He looked hopeful. He wanted it to be true. He wanted a reason to stop digging in the dirt. "Dad," he said softly, if she is pregnant." I held up a hand to stop him. I walked over to the small table beside my rocking chair. There was a manila envelope sitting there. It had been sitting there since yesterday when Silas, my private investigator, dropped it off. I picked up the envelope. I tapped it against my palm. "You know, Chloe," I said, "I have always been a man who believes in verification. Measure twice, cut once. That is the rule of construction, and it is the rule of life." "What are you talking about?" Chloe asked. Her smile faltered slightly. "I am talking about biology," I said. I opened the envelope. I pulled out a document with a colorful chart on the front. "You left in a hurry the other day," I said. "When the police took you away, you left a lot of things behind. Clothes, shoes, and your hairbrush." Chloe went pale. Her hand dropped from her stomach. "My hairbrush," she whispered. It was full of hair. I continued walking down the steps until I was standing right in front of her. "DNA is a funny thing, Chloe. It tells stories. It tells the truth even when the person it belongs to is a liar. I held up the paper. I had Silas run a test, I said. I had him compare the DNA from your hairbrush with the DNA from my son. And then I had him cross-reference it with the prenatal paternity test results you threw in the trash can at the clinic downtown 3 days ago. Silas has friends in waste management. He retrieves things. Chloe took a step back. She looked like she was about to vomit. You dug through my trash, she hissed. You dug through my life, I countered. I looked at the chart. This document says 2 things. I said, my voice loud enough for Andre to hear clearly. First, it says, you are indeed pregnant. Congratulations. Andre took a step forward. Chloe. But I interrupted him, my voice cutting like a saw. Second, it says that the probability of Andre Jefferson being the father is 0.0%. The silence in the yard was absolute. The birds stopped singing. The wind stopped blowing. 0, Andre whispered. I looked at Chloe. Her face was a mask of terror. The father is not a Jefferson, I said. The father shares a genetic marker with a certain personal trainer named Jax, the same man who left you in the driveway, the same man who is currently being sued for child support by 2 other women in the city. Liar, Chloe screamed. She lunged for the paper. Give me that. It is fake. You forged it. I pulled the paper back. It is real, Chloe, I said, and it is admissible in court. You came here to commit fraud. Again. You came here to pin another man's child on my son so you could get your hands on my trust fund. You thought a baby was a key to the safe. Andre walked up to her. He was covered in dirt. He smelled of sweat and soil. He looked at his wife. Is it true, he asked. Is it Jax's baby? Chloe looked at him. She looked at his dirty clothes. She looked at his broken spirit. She sneered. Of course it is his, she spat. Look at you, Andre. You are a loser. You are a gardener. Jax is a man. He is strong. He is beautiful. I needed a backup plan. I needed insurance. And this baby was supposed to be my ticket back into the good life. But you ruined it. She turned to me screaming now, her face twisted and ugly. You ruined everything, you old devil. You should have just died. You should have died and left us the money. Why won't you just die? Because I have too much trash to take out first, I said calmly. I pointed to the gate. Get out, Chloe. Take your baby and go to the gym. Maybe Jax will give you a free membership. But you are not getting a dime from me, and you are not pinning that child on my son. The Jefferson line remains clean. Chloe stood there shaking with rage. She looked around. She realized she had lost. The final gambit had failed. I am going to sue you, she shrieked. I am going to tell everyone what you did. Tell them I said. Tell them I saved my son from raising a stranger's child. Tell them I saved my estate from a predator. I think they will understand. She turned to run, but she didn't get far. A police cruiser pulled up behind the taxi. 2 officers stepped out. They weren't the local deputies. They were city police. Chloe Jefferson, one of them called out. Chloe froze. No, she whimpered. Not again. We have a warrant for your arrest, the officer said, walking up the driveway. Multiple counts of credit card fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny from the Neiman Marcus downtown. Apparently you tried to open a line of credit in your husband's name yesterday. Andre looked at her. He didn't move to help her. He didn't say a word. He just watched. They handcuffed her again. It was becoming a familiar look for her. She screamed. She kicked. She cursed us both. I watched from the porch. I felt nothing but a cold resolution. They put her in the car. The taxi driver drove away, unpaid, shaking his head. Andre stood in the driveway looking at the spot where his wife had stood. He looked at the dirt on his hands. Dad, he said, his voice thick. She was going to make me raise another man's child. She was going to make me pay for it. She was going to make you pay for everything, son, I said. That is what she does. She is a bill that never comes due. Andre looked up at me. He had tears in his eyes. You knew, he said. You knew before she even opened her mouth. I made it my business to know, I said. Because you didn't. You were too busy looking at the surface to check the foundation. He nodded slowly. He wiped his face with his dirty sleeve. I am sorry, Dad, he whispered. Don't be sorry, I said, picking up my glass of lemonade. Be smart. Now pick up that hoe. The carrots aren't going to weed themselves. And if you finish before sunset, I will make grilled cheese sandwiches. Andre looked at the hoe. He picked it up. He gripped it tight. Yes, sir, he he said. He went back to work. The rhythmic sound of the metal hitting the earth filled the silence. Chop, chop, chop. It was the sound of rebuilding. It was the sound of a life being reclaimed one weed at a time. I sat back in my chair. The sun was going down. The air was cooling. Chloe was gone. The baby was not ours. The threat was neutralized. Phase 15 was complete. The enemy had been routed. Now there was just the long, slow work of healing. And I had plenty of time. I had my health. I had my money. And for the first time in a long time, I had a son who was learning how to be a man. I took a sip of lemonade. It was sweet. It was tart. It was perfect. Time is a river, and sometimes you have to build a dam to stop the flow of destruction, but other times you have to let the water wash everything away so you can see the bedrock. It had been 3 months since the night Chloe was arrested and my son Andre moved into my tool shed. 3 months of sweating in the sun. 3 months of blisters turning into calluses. 3 months of silence where the only sound was the scrape of a shovel and the rhythmic breathing of a man learning how to work. I watched him from my kitchen window every morning. The man who used to spend an hour styling his hair now washed his face with a garden hose and dried it with a rough towel. The man who used to complain if his latte wasn't the right temperature now drank water from a plastic jug and ate peanut butter sandwiches without a word of complaint. He had lost 30 pounds. His face was lean and brown from the sun. His eyes, which used to dart around looking for an angle or an exit, were now steady. They were the eyes of a man who knew exactly where his next meal was coming from. It was coming from the ground he was tilling. He had finished the garden weeks ago, but he kept finding things to do. He fixed the fence, he painted the shed, he cleaned the gutters. He didn't ask for money, he didn't ask for permission, he just worked. He was paying a debt that couldn't be measured in dollars, and he knew it. One evening, I walked out to the shed. Andre was sitting on an overturned bucket sharpening the blade of the hoe with a file. He looked up when I approached. He stood up. He didn't cower anymore. He stood straight. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Hey, son," I replied. I looked at the shed. It was clean, organized. It was a better home than the mansion had been because it was honest. "I have been thinking," I said, about what he asked. "About this house," I said, turning to look at the structure that had sheltered us for 40 years. "It is a big house, Andre. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a formal dining room we never use. It was a good house for a family, but there is no family here anymore. Just 2 men and a lot of ghosts." Andre looked at the house. He looked at the window of his old bedroom. "It is your home, Dad," he said. "No," I said. "It is a building. Home is where you build a life. And I am done building here. The foundation is cracked, son. Not literally. But the memories, they are heavy. Every room reminds me of something I lost, or something I had to destroy to save." I paused. I let the evening air fill my lungs. "I sold it," I said. Andre dropped the file. It clattered on the concrete floor. "You sold the house," he whispered. "When?" "This morning," I said. "I signed the papers an hour ago. The buyers are a young couple. They have a baby on the way. They need the space. They need the yard. They need to fill these rooms with new laughter, not old regrets." Andre looked at me. His face was unreadable. "Where will you live?" he asked. I smiled. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a set of keys. They were heavy. They had a keychain in the shape of a globe. "Come with me," I said. I walked him to the front of the house. Parked in the driveway where the Porsche used to sit was a beast, a 45-foot Prevost Marathon coach. It was black and silver polished to a mirror shine. It was a mansion on wheels. It had marble floors, leather seats, and an engine that could pull a mountain. "What is this?" Andre asked, his eyes wide. "This is my new address," I said, patting the side of the bus. "It has a king-size bed, a full kitchen, and a satellite uplink. And the best part is the view changes whenever I want it to." "You bought a bus," he said. "I bought freedom," I corrected him. "I spent 40 years planting roots, Andre. Now I want to see the leaves. I want to see the Grand Canyon. I want to drive the Pacific Coast Highway. I want to eat lobster in Maine and tacos in San Diego." I looked at him. I looked him dead in the eye. "And I am going to do it alone." Andre looked at the bus, then at the house, then at me. He didn't argue. He didn't beg to come along. He nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. "Do you?" I asked. "I hope so." Because here is the rest of the news. I am not leaving you any money, Andre. Not a dime. He flinched. Just a little. Old habits die hard. I am going to spend it. I said, my voice firm, but not unkind. I am going to spend every single cent in my accounts. I am going to stay in the best RV parks. I am going to buy the best food. I am going to tip waitresses $100 bills just to see them smile. I earned this money, and I am going to enjoy it before I die. And what about me? Andre asked quietly. I looked at his hands. They were rough. They were strong. You, I said, pointing to his chest. You have your own life, remember? You have your own hands. You have your own back. I reached into my pocket again. I pulled out a small envelope. This is for you, I said, handing it to him. He opened it. Inside was a check. It wasn't for $1 million. It wasn't for 100,000. It was for $5,000. That is your pay, I said. $10 an hour for 3 months of work, minus room and board. That is what you earned. It is yours. You can burn it, you can gamble it, or you can use it to start over. Andre looked at the check. $5,000. To the man who used to wear $5,000 suits, it should have been an insult, but he looked at it like it was a gold medal. It is enough, he said. It is more than enough, I said. It is seed money. Plant it wisely. We stood there in the twilight, the old man and the new man, the father and the son. We weren't hugging, we weren't crying, we were just standing. 2 men acknowledging that the contract had changed. When do you leave? He asked. Tomorrow morning, I said. The new owners move in on Monday. You have tonight to pack your things from the shed. Where will you go first? He asked. West, I said. I have always liked the sunset. And me? He asked. Where should I go? I don't know, son, I said. That is the beauty of it. You get to decide. You don't have to ask me for permission. You don't have to ask me for funds. You are free, Andre. You are terrifyingly, completely free. He looked down at his boots. Work boots. Steel-toed. Thank you, he whispered. For what I asked. For cutting you off. For letting you starve. For humiliating you. No, he said, looking up. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. Thank you for the shovel. I felt a tightness in my throat. I swallowed it down. You are welcome, I said. I turned and walked toward the bus. I opened the door. The steps extended automatically with a soft hydraulic hiss. I looked back one last time. Andre was walking toward the shed. He walked with a purpose. He didn't drag his feet. He walked like a man who had work to do. I climbed into the driver's seat. It was high up. I felt like a captain on a bridge. I looked at the dashboard. It was lit up like a cockpit. GPS, radar, engine diagnostics. I was 75 years old. I was alone. I had no home. And I had never been happier. I went to the back of the bus and made myself a cup of tea. I sat in the leather captain's chair and watched the house through the tinted window. The house I had built. The house where Betty and I had raised a boy who got lost and then found himself in the dirt. It was just a building now. Wood and brick. The life had moved out. I thought about the future. I thought about the open road. I thought about the miles of asphalt waiting for me. I wasn't running away. I was running toward. I checked my bank account on my phone. The numbers were large, comforting. I'm going to have a hell of a time spending this, I said to the empty bus. I slept in the bus that night, parked in my own driveway. It was the best sleep I had had in months. The bed was soft, the air conditioning was quiet. When I woke up, the sun was rising. I looked out the window. The shed door was open. It was empty. Andre was gone. He had cleaned the shed. He had left the shovel leaning against the wall, clean and oiled. On the workbench, he had left a note. It was written on a piece of scrap paper. It didn't say, I love you. It didn't say, I am sorry. It said, I will pay you back. Every cent. I smiled. He wouldn't. Not the money. But he would pay me back in a way that mattered more. He would survive. I started the engine. The big diesel roared to life. I released the parking brake. I put it in gear and pulled out of the driveway. I didn't look back at the house. I looked forward. The road was wide, the tank was full, and the ledger was finally closed. I turned onto the main road and headed west, toward the sunset, toward the rest of my life. 5 years is a long time when you are waiting for a train, but it is the blink of an eye when you are finally driving the engine. I spent those 5 years doing exactly what I promised. I drove that massive black bus across the spine of the Rockies. I parked it on the edge of the Grand Canyon and drank coffee while watching the sun paint the rocks purple and gold. I ate jambalaya in New Orleans that was so spicy it made me cry, and I ate lobster rolls in Maine that were so sweet they made me laugh. I lived. For the first time in 40 years, I wasn't Marcus the engineer or Mr. Jefferson the provider. I was just a man with a full tank of gas and no deadline. But I never forgot. I never stopped watching. I sent postcards, not many, just enough to let him know I was still out there. I sent one from Paris with a picture of the Eiffel Tower. On the back I wrote "Steel and Rivets Son," just like us. It stands because it bends with the wind. I didn't put a return address. I didn't want a reply. I just wanted to plant a seed. Silas, my investigator, kept me updated. The reports came in emails encrypted and short. Andre was living in a small walk-up apartment in a working-class neighborhood. It wasn't the Heights. There were no heated driveways. But it was clean. He had gotten a job at a local hardware store, not as a manager, but as a floor associate. He stocked shelves. He mixed paint. He carried bags of concrete for customers just like he had carried that shovel in my garden. The reports said he was quiet. He didn't go to bars. He didn't gamble. He drove a 10-year-old sedan that he washed himself on weekends. He had met a woman, a school librarian named Sarah, who drove a Honda and wore glasses. She didn't care about trust funds. She cared about him. I read those reports sitting on the deck of a bungalow in Bali. That was where I ended up. The bus was sold. The road had run out, so I crossed the ocean. The humidity wrapped around me like a warm blanket. My bones were tired. The doctor in the village told me my heart was slowing down. It wasn't a tragedy. It was just mechanics. Every engine has a lifespan, and mine had run hard. I wasn't afraid. I sat on the beach and watched the tide come in. I thought about my wife, Betty. I thought about the house we built. And I thought about Andre. I wondered if he still hated me. I wondered if he still looked at his hands and remembered the blisters. I died on a Tuesday. It was peaceful. I went to sleep listening to the waves, and I just didn't wake up. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. I had left something better. Lucinda handled everything. She was the executor. She flew Andre out to Bali to collect my ashes. He stood on that beach, a man of 45, with gray at his temples and calluses on his palms. He wasn't wearing a $3,000 suit. He was wearing a simple linen shirt and trousers. He looked at the ocean, and he scattered me into the water. He didn't cry like a child who lost a toy. He cried like a man who lost a father he was just getting to know. Then he flew back to the city. He went to Lucinda's office for the reading of the will. I wasn't there, but I know exactly how it happened because I wrote the script. He sat in the leather chair. The office smelled of old paper and mahogany. Lucinda sat behind the desk looking at him over her spectacles. "Your father left instructions?" Lucinda said, her voice professional but soft. "I know," Andre said. "He told me he was going to spend it all. He told me to take care of myself. I don't expect anything, Lucinda. I just wanted to say goodbye." He really believed it. He believed I had burned through every cent, and honestly I had tried. But compound interest is a stubborn thing, and good investments don't just disappear. "He did spend a lot," Lucinda said, opening the thick file on her desk. "He enjoyed his life, Andre. But Marcus Jefferson was a civil engineer. He never built anything without a reserve fund, and he never started a project without a legacy plan." Andre looked up. His eyes were confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. Lucinda slid a document across the polished wood of the desk. It was heavy, bound in blue legal paper. "This is the charter for the Marcus Jefferson Scholarship Fund," she said. "It is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing full tuition for underprivileged youth who want to study engineering and architecture. It is endowed with the remaining assets of your father's estate. The portfolio is currently valued at $2.5 million. Andre looked at the document. He nodded slowly. A sad smile touched his lips. "That is perfect," he said. "That is exactly what he would do. He loved building things. It is a great legacy. Good for him." He started to stand up. He thought the meeting was over. He thought the money was gone to strangers. "Sit down, Mr. Jefferson," Lucinda commanded. "We are not done." Andre sat back down. "A fund needs a director," Lucinda said. "It needs someone to review the applications. It needs someone to interview the students, to look them in the eye and see if they have the grit to finish the program. It needs someone who understands the value of hard work and the cost of a free ride." She turned the page of the document. She pointed to a line at the bottom. Your father appointed a lifetime executive director, she said. The position comes with a salary. $65,000 a year adjusted annually for inflation, plus full health benefits. Andre stared at the paper. He read the name typed on the line. Andre Jefferson. He looked at Lucinda. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. There are conditions, Lucinda added, leaning forward. Strict conditions. You cannot touch the principal, you cannot borrow against the fund, you cannot sell the assets, you can only manage the income and distribute the scholarships. You have to show up to the office every day. You have to do the work. If you fail to perform your duties, the board has the right to remove you. Andre ran his hand over the paper. He touched his name. He gave me a job, he whispered. He didn't give me money. He gave me a job. He gave you a purpose, Lucinda corrected him. He watched you, Andre. He had investigators watching you at the hardware store. He saw you show up on time. He saw you work double shifts. He saw you pay your own rent. He told me that a man who can dig a garden with blistered hands is a man who can build a future. Tears welled up in Andre's eyes. They spilled over and ran down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away. He knew he asked. He knew I changed. He knew Lucinda said. He said that the shovel was the best gift he ever gave you. But this is the second best. Andre picked up the pen. His hand didn't shake. He signed his name. It wasn't the scrawl of a man forging a check. It was the signature of a man accepting a responsibility. He walked out of that office, not a millionaire, but a man with a mission. He went back to his small apartment. He married Sarah a year later. They have a son now. They named him Marcus. And that is the lesson. That is the truth I learned at the bottom of a whiskey glass and the top of a skyscraper. We often confuse love with enabling. I spent 40 years shielding my son from the rain only to realize I had prevented him from learning how to build his own shelter. When he told me he had his own life, it was a slap in the face, but it was also a wake-up call. By cutting the financial cord, I didn't abandon him. I gave him the dignity of standing on his own 2 feet. Wealth is not what you leave to your children, but what you leave in them. A parent's greatest legacy isn't a check, but the resilience to survive without one. I am Marcus Jefferson. I was a builder, and in the end, I built a man. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I am looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There is so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. We often mistake financial support for love, but sometimes writing a check is the easiest way to cripple a child's future. I spent decades acting as the structural pillar for my son's life, never realizing I was preventing him from standing on his own. When he told me he had his own life, it was a painful wake-up call, but also a necessary demolition. By removing the safety net, I forced him to build his own wings on the way down. True legacy isn't about what you leave for your children in a bank account, but what you leave in them: resilience, integrity, and the pride of an honest day's work. Do you think Marcus was too harsh on his son, or was it the only way to save him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of tough love and justice, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more life stories. See you in the next video.